Hey everybody, happy spooky Friday the 13th here from X's for Show, which you can check out on all of your spooky soch at X's for Show. As for me, you can find me clearly aboard the Nostromo. I am Nico Action, and I am here alongside two of my absolute favorite friends to celebrate some of the best content in the history of horror, spookiness, and Halloween good times. You can find me at Nico Action. That's NicoAction.
And I am not dressed to theme. I'm in a Super Mario sweatshirt.
It
But I
works.
got it at the Walmart by Nico's house, so it's kind of on theme in its own way. I'm realizing now I don't have enough spooky clothes. I got to work on that. Whether I start feeling my goth girl fantasy or just get Buffy's cheerleading outfit, we will find out. Follow my journey on social media at TK Elemental.
I have a hoodie you can use for that. We just need to get you some yellow booty shorts, and you're right, and you're good to
Yes.
go. And some
I'm
palms.
there.
I've got a scarf too, a class of '99 Buffy Sunnydale scarf. So we're gonna hook you up. So we're gonna get you in a sexy cheerleader boy outfit. So keep an eye out for that. And until then, I am your producer, Tony Stark.
I mean, who's spooky in his own way? Because if that shrapnel kills him, he's a ghost.
It is really true. And this
He's-
also makes noise.
Yeah, I love it.
It's a bubble shooter, but the first one that I got when I put the bubble mix in it, it stopped doing all of the functions. So no bubbles for this one ever.
Oh, she
and that's
shorted out.
She shorted out. I might short out too. I'm so excited for this episode. You can find me on the socials at Kevo Really. That's KEVOREALL. Why are we here? We're here to talk some awesome Halloween content goodness. I came to you guys with this idea of putting together 24-hour programming blocks, each of us, with some of our favorite holiday programming. And here we are, Teak.
First, I gotta say, you came to us with an option for
Yeah.
8 hours or 24 hours, and Nico
like,
immediately
12 was in
jumped
the
on.
mix.
Nico immediately jumped on 24, and I immediately was like, that's insane. How could we come up with 24 hours of content? And I ended up desperate for a 48-hour movie marathon so that I could cover everything I actually wanted in it. So
Maybe next year.
Yeah, I definitely have room for a second one, and it'll be really fantastic. But I just want to say I apologize for doubting that we could pull off 3 times the amount of spookitude that I thought we could. And I just love this idea. Yeah.
For me, I had an entire list of horror musicals, and I had to cut all of them because it turns out you can do like a good 9 hours on vampire musicals alone. Whether it's Lestat, Dance of the Vampires, Dracula. You can put in some other horror musicals in there.
Honestly, I'd throw Phantom of the Opera in the mix.
Phantom.
Oh,
Repo,
yeah, totally.
Sweeney Todd, obviously.
Yeah.
So there were just
Obviously.
too many good. Tori, do you remember the name of the play that was like it's a whodunit? I think it might even be called Whodunit.
I hope it is.
There was a murder mystery play where you could it was actually off Broadway, I think too. But
Happy Friday the 13th, everyone, by the way. Happy Friday the 13th.
Yeah, and I just want to say the least spooky thing in the entire world was getting to see some awesome folks in the audience getting psyched for the show. So we're ready to bring you a real good one. 13 steps! Mystery of Edwin Drood. Okay, it was 13 steps. Thank you. But
isn't that on Netflix and it's teens?
Ha!
13 steps. Why?
I do love Phantom. That's amazing. Oh, but yeah, 39 steps. Thank you. That sounds more. But as soon as I saw steps, like the band.
13 Steps is the prequel. Got it.
Now, one of the things I want to talk about is why we're doing this.
Yeah, why are we doing this?
Why are we ever doing any of this?
That's a great question.
programming 24 hours of holiday spooky marathoning to sort of express the wide variety of horror. Something I experience a lot when I'm going to score for this show is like, what is, Halloween music? Like when I go to do, like, I'm already 6 weeks into Christmas practice. So like I have like weeks of Christmas music, but like there's just not as much Halloween music to pull from. So, we're talking about a sort of celebration that's very short-lived, very specific, but we all kind of cash in on it in our own way, whether it's spooky episodes of things or remembering, Are You Afraid of the Dark? But for me, the awakening of my love of fear was definitely something that TK and Kevo both really so expertly are going to hit in their lists. But it was sort of the formative reinculturation of teens, tweens, and, maybe even kids have interest in genres like horror. And it was born of things like spooky tales, 30 more spooky tales to spook you out in the dark. And of course, my favorite, you might be gay if you're always reading this slightly homoerotic teen spooky shit under your bed covers at night. I think that one was by Lois Lowry. So I really, really want to just put out there that my big horror thing for 2023 is going to have to be something TK turned me on to. And that is the Magnus Archives, which I just kind of like listen to, and then I go back and I listen to it a little bit more because like every time I keep noticing there's a connection somewhere else, I have to go back. And so then I had to get like an audiobook player so that I can like navigate quickly and find it. But while it's not going to be on my list this year, I just want to give a special shout out to Magnus Archives, which whether it's cannibals, sorcerers, people who can pull bones out of people, a talent I also have actually. I just really
think you put bones into people.
Right. I just
he's a surgeon, everyone.
Which surgeon? Okay, you know what? I'm just gonna let it pass.
I just want to mention I loved my Xenomorph plush so hard that the mouth doesn't work anymore. So that's a thing. Anyway,
that is what happened.
I do want to say, something that Tasty Cake is hitting on so perfectly is it is a necessity dealing with humanity. And yeah, perfect joke, horrible monsters, but like actual horror is something that we're able to use to understand the darkness of the world around us. It is definitely a part of who we are. And I would love to know, I said Magnus, I'm going to put some other stuff out there. Kevo, TK, is there anything either one of you didn't put on your list that you kind of wish you could? Like I said, for me, it's those musicals, it's Magnus, but how about you guys?
For me, it is a bunch of other horror podcasts, Malevolent, Divisor, both by the same creator. I highly recommend. Sorry,
what's that really scary one? It's terrifying. And Coulter's podcast, right?
Get out of here. Malevolent, Divisor, the Lovecraft Investigations, whose 4th season is coming on to BBC Sound, I think, this week. I listen to a ton of horror podcasts. Just to kind of piggyback off what you were saying, Nico, you're going to see in my marathon list, I have loved horror since I was like, 5 or 6. And I didn't really realize I loved horror until like over 30. I kind of didn't really, for me, horror was all the stuff that I don't like. So it's like Eli Roth, Saw. Like, I really don't like, I don't like torture porn. I don't like gore.
I grew up a goth chick. You guys shock me when you say this stuff.
And I think I really felt like I didn't belong in the genre because, like I loved Mary Riley. Mary Riley didn't make it onto this list, but I loved, 1992's Dracula, 96's Mary Riley, which is about
it's
Dr.
about
Jekyll.
Julia Roberts being fascinating.
Exactly. And John Malkovich being John Malkovich. But you get 2 for the price of 1. So like, all of these things I really loved, and I just thought, right, but like, there's a threshold I don't go past. And actually, you know, I will say it came a little bit before the podcast. The podcasts really are where I found my genre and my voice in horror. But it was when I saw the original Wicker Man, which is a horror musical fantasy sex romp. And I think, you know, a lot of people see it as a defining horror film. But it's also...
Well, the only difference between that and Cannibal Holocaust is the monkey scene.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of serious.
It's, you know, it's just a fantastic musical. And I think seeing that and seeing how that interacted with horror genre and fandom, I really realized that it's a huge tent and it is perfectly fine not to like the Green Infernos, the Hostels, the Saws, and still consider yourself really a fan of the genre. And that's when I started to really pull together my influences. So, you know, like I said, the horror podcast, and if you ever want recommendations, I have so many. Please message me at TK Elemental on any social media. I'd love to talk about it. And then also, you know, something I've been saying for the past couple years, and is very much thank you to Nico for this, Marvel's doing some phenomenal horror comics.
And big news today, you get to break it. You get to break it.
In the line of their horror comics, we are getting in Marvel's Contest of Champions a playable Kushala, the Spirit Rider, one of the Ghost Riders. And Ghost Rider, to me, is emblematic of Marvel doing great horror. I feel really bad because I'm very critical about Ben Percy's X-Force and Wolverine. But holy hell, I think his Ghost Rider is one of the best horror stories of the 21st century period. I mean, I really think it's so good. I think he's a phenomenal horror writer. We've got Crypt of Shadows, the second volume, coming out this week. We had Cap Wolf, Crypt of Shadows is coming out on the 18th. Cap Wolf came out on the 11th. Marvel's doing a bunch of stuff for the spooky season, and I really think it's all good. Blade is killing it. Brielle, Bloodline, Daughter of Blade, also fantastic. Marvel is leaning into horror in a really exciting way. And, comics and podcasts, who would have thought that those would be two places where horror as a genre could thrive?
I think thank your neighbor Stephen King.
Yeah. Oh God, and don't even get me into that.
Hold on. Funny story. I'm talking to my
Please.
parents today, right? And I'm just talking with them a little bit, and they're telling me that, oh, but did you know that this person did this, and and they're telling me this fun facts, and I was like, you know what? Because they're saying, did you know this person knew this person, and this person knew this person, famous celebrities that work together, and I was like, guys, just do yourself a favor and look up the members of the rock band, the Rock Bottom Remainders. And my mom was like, what do you mean Stephen King and Amy Tan were in a band together? And I'm like, oh, yes. Talk about horror shows. But speaking of horror shows and divine writers, Kevo, I just want to say, you know, when I think about DC Vertigo, that is like literally where I knew I was a horror fan as a child. At like 10 years old, I knew Sandman was a horror book, and it defined me as a person in many ways.
The Corinthian.
The Corinthian. But, you know, for me, I actually really personalize books of magic and the Dead Boy Detectives. There's a lot of like Lucifer, very specific spin-off canon that I delve into heavily. But getting to share Sandman with you last year was like a near religious experience. And I know, TK, you got to have a similar experience with Jake. But, you know, Kevo, what did you have to sacrifice from this list?
I think it is fairly well known about me that I am probably the least spoopy boy in our pack. I have Halloween updated my background to be something Nightmare Before Christmas to reflect even the fact that it's probably about as scary as I get at times. When I watched Buffy when we were younger, I just thought it was a fantasy adventure series. I only realized as an adult, all the stuff that I didn't like was part of the horror genre that I just didn't get because I was a child. Okay, sure. I've come to appreciate horror a lot more as we've gotten older, spookier, gorier things. Even then, I think the spookiest thing that I probably would have added to my list that I was really waffling on, if I had had 2 extra hours, I wanted to add the first 2 episodes of Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, which at one point was what?
Jean Grey, the TV show, finest
Kind
interpretation
of,
of Jean Grey ever.
literally. A really beautiful 36 episode series that, if it had kept going, might have ended up a lot worse.
Not a
Really
mistake.
sweet. We love Kiernan Shipka. Great cast. And probably a little bit more horrific than would have been my taste some time ago. But no, really great, sweet series.
I love it. Now, I mentioned to Kevo earlier that I did a little bit of research into the Jersey Devil, which, of course, it turns out anytime you can find a regional folk tale, you should sort of just back up a second and then find the Native American or the, indigenous First Peoples tale that it is borrowed from. But I think something that is unique is beyond that, we all have our definitions of fear that are sort of unique to our situations. The Pine Barrens are actually, it's unfair that we consider the Pine Barrens of New Jersey a scary area. It actually has to do with a eugenics report that referred to them all as basically inbred simpletons. It's actually a nightmare, and it's like legitimately kind of problematic. But in that regard, we have these fear things built into our culture. TK, you literally, as a Mainer, right? You are a man of the woods, basically. You're Justin Timberlake. And I'm always really curious when I drive into Maine to come see you and spend time with you, like the sort of endless expanse of untapped wilderness of Maine is literally a horror unto itself. Like, it's actually scary that I could get broken down on a road in Maine and have no idea where I am.
Yeah, I mean, Maine has so much of its own horror life. You have that New England coastal gothic horror option at any time. My house is 140 years old, I think. So very possibly haunted. So many other houses here are haunted. We have so many old cemeteries. And then on top of that, we do have the slasher scenarios. You're broke down in the woods and logging country. You are out in places where you hear sounds at night and you don't know what they are. We've got the skinwalkers, all of the stuff that you hear about in more commonly Appalachian folk tales are also very present in Maine. And then we have stuff like, bringing it back to Stephen King, a lot of the horror references in his material are kind of nebulously drawn from Maine legend. The biggest one, I was talking to Nico about this because we don't have a ton of great cryptids. We don't have a Jersey Devil really. Ours are very transparently pulled from the Wabanaki, and so I don't like to reference them like they are our thing because they're not our thing. They're a bastardization of native people's thing. So, that's for them to talk about. But Stephen King in The Dark Tower writes about walk-ins, which are essentially people coming from other universes into ours. And that is kind of ill-definedly based in Maine folklore, and it's weird and tough to get into, but New England is a weird place. We are populated enough that we can all sit here and think about it, and remote enough that there's a lot of room for spooky stuff to happen. And hello there, Bruno.
Well,
hello there, Bruno. Welcome.
Bruno Campos says into the chat, hello, guys. Watching a horror a day. Today on the menu, Sleepaway Camp.
I love Sleepaway Camp.
I love Sleepaway Camp, number one. And number two, that's such a great time to transition to TK's list, which is predominantly some classic horror movies that I grew up on that definitely made me the freaky, frightened fan that I am. And I am really excited to jump into this list. So I think without further ado, let's get into our horror movie marathon list with TK.
Let's do it. So
do you want to go one by one or flash the whole list up front and then...
You can flash the whole list up front, and then we can kind of break it down a little bit. So my list is a 90s horror extravaganza. As I was saying earlier in the broadcast, these are all movies that I watched as a kid. Buffy the Vampire Slayer came out in 1992, so I was 7 years old. And, you know, all of these movies I saw essentially when they came out. And with the exception of like Candyman and Wes Craven's New Nightmare, a lot of them I didn't really see as horror. Like I felt like they were horror light, maybe.
Yeah, like My Boyfriend's Back. Like I totally get what you mean. And like
My Boyfriend's Back. So I started with Buffy and My Boyfriend's Back. We'll get to it in a second because those are spins on the horror genre. Those are light. Those are specifically light, and I wanted to ease us into it with some fun, and then and it's a little bit chronological. Buffy is the earliest, and then Event Horizon is actually exactly 2000. So I gave us, you know, basically 10 years. But yeah, these were the horror movies that I grew up with. These were what kind of boundaried my horror experience and sort of gave me that delineating line between what I wanted to see and stuff that I felt was maybe a little too much for me. Although a lot of that stuff comes later. Like, you know, the Hostel and Saw movies really come after this.
Now, but I want to interact with this list because as a horror boy, right? As a guy who so growing up, I had an enormous crush on my next door neighbor's grandson. So like I'm 8, he's 10. And my next door neighbor is like desperate for him to have friends when he comes over. So he's always renting these horror movies. And I'm so scared, but he's handsome and I want to get through them. And I kind of ultimately desensitized to a number of these movies that way. But so it sort of did mean that like when Scream came out, I was ready for Scream. And it meant that when The Faculty came out, I recognized it as like silly kiddie stuff. And so but it had BB Newirth, so it had everything I needed to be happy. So here's where I want to.
Weird kid.
Of course. Now, do you remember? I think it was The Forsaken or The Forgotten. It was like I think Jason Bear or Brendan Fair. It was one of the Roswell guys.
Yeah.
And it was like a vampire movie.
Yeah.
Right. What keeps that off the list? But something like I Still Know What You Did Last Summer, which I really need to be clear with you. When Kevo and I want to say a plot twist is stupid, we literally go, you know, Will, Ben's son. And so like, but we'll do it to anything. We'll be like, you know, Boyd runs the dollhouse. You know what I mean?
Yep. I put those in there because I felt like they were iconic to the idea of having sequels.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know, Scream chugged on, and we'll get into it. But you know, I Still Know What You Did Last Summer was sort of riding a wave, and it was the wave got a lot smaller. And Scream really is the only thing that survived out of it. And in the 2000s, horror went in very different places. But, you know, a lot of these movies are sequels or had sequels. But I think, you know, now's a good time just to go through a little bit and just talk a little bit about each of these. I promise I won't go too long on any of them. But Kevo, God love you, made some incredible slides for these. So I want to show them off.
I do want to say that the best line from this entire movie is the single word clap.
So many great lines. Look, air.
It's when he says, I'm a vampire, I can do anything. And he only has one arm. And she goes, oh, yeah, clap. It's a killer.
Paul Rubens dying is really funny.
Hey, that just
too many people.
This year.
Too many of the wrong people from this movie are dead.
Yes. Yep.
Oh my gosh, but I just realized the connection between Buffy and Scream is David Arquette. Let me in, Pike. I'm hungry, Pike.
This is a good era for the Arquettes as a whole. But yeah, I mean, you know, this is just, it's a phenomenal cast. Look at Hilary Swank there, just living her teen fantasy.
It's retro.
In her second best role ever, because everybody knows that more impressive than anything else in her entire filmography.
Yep.
is
Yep.
her brief stint as the ugly roommate on 90210.
Oh, I thought we were going with Karate Kid, but
I
sure.
too thought we were going with Next Karate Kid.
You're probably right on that though. Yo, dude, can I borrow her? 1992.
Souvenir.
This is just an iconic comedy genre movie. It isn't scary, but it pulls from a horror trope, the vampire, and does really fun things with it. And of course, it'll go on to be a beloved TV series with a garbage creator who also, created this. And I think this and Clueless are really the two films that kind of got me psyched about eventually being in high school.
I get that.
Okay, now my boyfriend's back. Very cute, but I gotta know why.
Because I felt like this is an era where zombies don't get much play.
Yeah.
Okay, but what keeps this on the list but not Once Bitten with Jim Carrey?
Because I only had 24 hours, and some of it was just stuff that was my favorite.
Okay.
I watched this.
I thought part of it was the connection back to Buffy, because this lead is the guy who I zoomed in on in the Buffy screen grab.
I mean, that is part of it. It is that like this was an era for certain people, and these movies are both like, I think they really are both more comedies than they are horror, but they both use a horror trope to be comedies. And for my marathon, I wanted to start out with that lighthearted, reminder that a lot of horror is about playing with the tropes and playing with, because at this point, zombies are hundreds of years old. There's risen dead in
the Bible.
Cultures. In the Bible, exactly. In cultures around the world. Vampires, it's a little less time, but, some version of the vampire myth has been around forever. So we've played the trope out in terms of just scaring people, and now we have to laugh a little bit. And we're going to get into some real horror soon, so, I say we have fun.
No, the real horror is that we're only meeting Bruno Campos right now, who just commented that he loved that we're into horror, Marvel Comics, and one Miss Queen Tori Amos.
This is our life. Welcome.
I also feel like it was a huge missed opportunity that this was never remade with Dylan O'Brien. I feel like he would have excelled in a role.
Oh, I completely agree with that. I don't know who would be the girl, but
I actually think it should be remade queer.
Lucy Wilson?
But like, imagine this as My Girlfriend's Back, and it's a lesbian romance. Like,
I mean, that's just Jennifer's Body.
Oh, we could do an entire episode on the differing opinions on Jennifer's Body and the many scripts. That's a great one to bring up. So, okay. I love that you're like, I want to start this misleadingly with humor and then really amp up the body count.
I mean, I think this is a nice meld, because this is a movie that is at points a little scary. If you were younger than 10 when this came out, which I was, there were moments that were like a little bit, you were on edge towards the end. But a lot of it, especially for a little gay kid, these were just girls being cunty in high school. And that's what I thought I was going to go do.
This was literally, so I had a best friend as a child, Aldo, and we were both little gay Latino boys together, and it was our thing.
Yeah.
Right. And we watched this movie 1,000 times. And we used to be like, okay, you should, okay, ready? Okay, your turn. And I'll take my scars.
I'll take my,
Like, we would take turns being the role.
Christina and Laura and Megan. I remember my 6th grade coven. Oh, yeah.
Ours was named Tiger.
Oh, my God. We didn't have a name. We were that dumb.
We needed a code name.
The other thing about this is probably the scariest movie I had seen up until like in my 20s or 30s was Return to Oz, starring Fairuza Balk as Dorothy Gale, having just the worst time going back to Oz, a place that I thought was just supposed to be magical and fun, but apparently it's where a headless witch chases you around and screams at you, terrifying. not appropriate for a 4-year-old, but I did watch it repeatedly. And so seeing her, I was like, I'm going to grow up and be this bad bitch when I get into high school, and then I'm going to lose my fucking mind. So I just, this is one that we're still in high school. We still have a lot of funny moments. We still have a lot of like attitude and style moments, but this does have some genuine scare in it. There's some genuine moments of fear and suspense. And
He's sorry.
Skeet Ulrich,
yes,
eventual dad of Jughead.
Christine Taylor as well as a horrible little cunty bald nightmare. Oh my God, bald just like on Friends.
Oh wow! But you know what? I do want to give it up to Neve Campbell in this movie, who this really, I think, paved the way for Scream.
Yes.
And if it weren't for Neve Campbell, the identity of the final girl, which I think, like, I'm not saying that all of us have been in a Tori Amos, 5 a.m. Friday morning situation, but those of us who have been, we do have a sort of sense of like, but if I could channel all the strength of Sydney in this one moment, if I can be Sydney Prescott, Sydney Bristow, Sydney Australia, I'll be fine. But we all know we should just all immediately go to Sydney Mancini.
It's also, oh God, what a queen. She took over the mantle from Jamie Lee Curtis. I think that is who we all thought of before Scream. And then Scream happened, and it was just that same kind of iconic person and personality.
Because Jennifer Aniston didn't do it with Leprechaun. Like, I mean, it wasn't just any talented actress.
No, exactly. It can't be anybody. There's a mix of factors, and we'll get to Scream in a second. So if we want to, I mean, if you are somebody who's watching this who somehow hasn't seen The Craft, keep watching. But when we're done with the show, go watch The Craft.
You should. This is the one. And this is the other one.
And this is the other one. I mean, I don't think anybody hasn't seen Scream. This is the iconic horror movie of the 90s. This is pure perfection. I love it so much. I could never do it justice, but Neve Campbell became the final girl, taking over the mantle from Jamie Lee Curtis.
If this episode breaks 100 views, I'll start working on a Scream musical. I
mean, realistically, you were going to do it anyway, but let's get the viewers. Come on.
Possible.
Revitalizing Drew Barrymore's career. More Skeet Ulrich. This is how David Arquette and Courtney Cox get together. This gay romance.
Gay.
I mean, and this was one of the really early ones. The Craft does have some sapphic overtones, but I think we were at a time in the 90s where it was like two girls being a little bit lesbian on screen to titillate is always okay, but two men draped over each other in a way that really says they might have gone so off the deep end that they're actually having sex with each other is, I thought, a little bit brave and very hot.
Do you wonder if they were ever like, okay, now you stab me? Like, do you think they ever made it like it was about the realization of this meta-contextualization of both being homosexual and having these tendencies? They're not murderers because they're gay, and they're not gay because they're murderers. They're a beautiful intersection of deranged psychopath and homosexual.
Exactly.
And it's that expression of self that I think literally leads Kevin Smith to create Dawson's Creek.
One of my selections.
Kevin Williams, not Kevin Smith.
Oh my God, yeah. Oh, good point. I even heard it and then was just like, no, just keep going. It's fine. No. Oh, very different.
Jersey boy. Thank you for catching that, Kevo.
I'd love that crossover, though. One of my selects is a period piece sitcom, and the Halloween episode that takes place the year after this movie comes out has several people still talking about it because it was such an iconic film. Not them, not that part. They should be, though. Yeah. There's a gay person in it, though, so that's nice.
Yeah.
Anyway. Another one. The Pepsi to Scream
I was
Coke.
just about to say the Pepsi to Scream's Coke. Oh my God, Kevo.
I love you.
My man.
100%. This is what that is. And in that exact same way, Pepsi is of course fine if that's what they have at the restaurant.
Yeah.
Pepsi is just as good. It is
Anyone
purely
who says it's not is lying.
Yeah. This is, I mean, the only thing is Jennifer Love Hewitt is not the iconic final girl that Sydney is, but I think that may have less to do with Jennifer Love Hewitt and more to do with the fact that the movies are, what?
I want to comment. The mistake that they make is that Jennifer Love Hewitt is not the star of I Know What You Did Last Summer.
Yes.
But rather, it's Sarah Michelle Gellar and Ryan Philippe, who ultimately are not in the sequel. And one of the things that this capitalizes on very early on is the connection between Freddie Prinze Jr. as a handsome, younger David Arquette type, Ryan Philippe's back, his butt, his body type. There's something about him that kind of balances the fact that Scream lacks a likable sexual male figure, which ultimately, by creating a likable sexual male figure to bounce off of the female leads, in many ways kind of defeats them. One of the things that Sydney has going for her is she's not defined by a man in any way. Even though she's clearly with Billy, when Billy goes evil, she's ready to do what needs to be done.
Whereas not only is Jennifer Love Hewitt so severely defined by Freddie Prinze Jr., but he spends the majority of this film a suspect. So that makes the whole thing. There's something similar, and I won't get too far into it, but I'm rewatching Teen Wolf because I both love and hate myself. And there's certain things about the mystery that I'm like, this isn't going to pay off because I know this person who you're asking me to watch and like enjoy actually is the villain of this movie. Whereas Freddie Prinze Jr., it's the opposite. He spends so much of this movie being suspicious of him and his exposed arms that when, he's the love interest, it's way too confusing. It's all over the place.
First off, look at what everybody is wearing and just tell me this isn't fantastic.
They're
Sarah
literally
Michelle Gellar's hat alone is worth the price of admission.
Old Navy top, though, and they cut it at different heights.
Yeah. I will say I think you're right insofar as like Sarah Michelle Gellar's already on Buffy at this point, and is Buffy is essentially the ultimate final girl fantasy in which not only does she not die in the immediate horror scenario that's usually a one-off for a movie, she goes on to be that for for all time, for decades. She goes on to never be killed by the things that are trying to kill her and always kills them. So she has that energy and she brings that to I Know What You Did Last Summer. But what she really has that I think was a missed opportunity is she's the slut. And it's better in the 90s if the slut is the final girl. Jennifer Love Hewitt is defined in this movie by being so pure and good, and that she is the one to survive. Kind of says, be like Freddie Prinze and Jennifer Love and be the good guy and girl, and you will deserve to survive, where the hot sluts should die.
Their names are literally Prince and Love. Continue.
I know.
As a burgeoning hot slut at this point in my life,
one
of the things that really struck me was like, so I was a member of the BMG CD club because what I really wanted was to be able to buy one album for the amount of money I could save up each month from my lunch money, and then pay an additional penny per CD plus shipping and handling, and get my hands on like 10 albums for like $60. And I would buy up lots of music. Some was garbage. Some was great. Honest to God, I have to be real with you. I, as a kid, loved Jennifer Love Hewitt's discography so much. One year, my parents spent triple digits to get me her Japanese album sealed with the original J card attached. And anybody who has ever collected import albums, you have no idea how much it meant to me to have that J card with the original Japanese translations of the track listing available. It meant everything. So I went into this equally obsessed with these two women. This was like a thing for me. Oh, Tasty Cake, my brother. Dude, you and I, we're going to sit down. We're going to share a pint. It's going to be beautiful. But You were with Columbia House. I was with BMG, so you understand my life. But I really just want to say Jennifer Love Hewitt's purity really was the selling point of this.
Yes.
Because even when she got to Buffy, Sarah Michelle Gellar was already the young actress who pushed boundaries on All My Children, winning a Daytime Emmy, and kind of breaking boundaries with her acting prowess and the strength of her conviction with her character, going to some very dark places, playing against Susan Lucci at that point, like 15 years into her unlucky streak. So it was really something that you had these two women, one who had been on sort of a redemption streak, well, I should say young women, and the other who had always been the chaste girlfriend of Bailey, who had been the a lovable young face of Kids Incorporated. You know, Jennifer Love Hewitt, this really was transformational. And I think that's why we still talk about it, even though it's kind of a joke compared to Scream.
Yeah, and I don't even think it's a joke. I just think it is it's its own movie, and I think people just didn't respond to it the way they did to Scream. But I still love it. It's still on this list. But next up, Candyman. In the 90s, Black people in horror, it's not good, and it's not my place really to talk about, but one movie that got it right, as right as you can hope for the 90s, was Candyman. Candyman is one of the few movies on this list that actually scared me as a kid. This is like legit horror.
Frightening. When Tom, my neighbor's grandson, brought it over, I felt nauseous. It did not make me feel good inside. Inside felt all wrong.
Yep. Super scary. Like I said, this is one where it's not really my place to talk about, but it is iconic 90s horror. Like, this really was a moment in the genre, and I think the evolution of Black horror cinema coming to its apex with people like Jordan Peele making incredible films that center Black actors and Black stories. This is kind of one of the roots of that, and it's still absolutely frightening and phenomenally well done, and I think was really well remade, but not well marketed. That remake was not well marketed.
I think so many of the horror remakes of the 90s generation of original horror content have had a sort of sense of, oh, but they started in the 90s, so that was already when horror worked. We sort of look back every 20 years and say, let's sort of not just update things, but let's take a look at what made them work and change them here and there, which is why you mentioned the original Wicker Man and not the remake.
Exactly.
All right. So what comes after Candyman?
Wes Craven.
This is
why this one.
This is a little bit of like so movies are on here because they represent the era, not because they're good. Halloween H2O is coming up. Jason Goes to Hell is coming up. These were bad movies.
Okay, but Halloween H2O was, let's go with dual meaning, seminal for me. But this is legitimately just like literally one of the worst moments in the Friday the 13th.
Yeah.
Nightmare on Elm Street.
I am trying to paint a picture of of the decade of the 90s.
Miko Hughes was in this?
Yes.
Who's Miko Hughes?
Miko Hughes. He's the boys have a penis and girls have a vagina kid from Kindergarten Cop. His parents stole his money. He was in Pet Sematary. Yep. He was on Roswell. Oh my god. Oh, he's great. He's a raver kid now. Well, I haven't checked in a while. Yeah.
I mean, this is about what the genre of horror was from, it really starts at 1992, but from 1990 to 2000, what were the influences? What were people putting out? And some of it was bad. I think a lot of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies are bad. The first one is fantastic, but a lot of the rest of them aren't good. And then this is a promise that this is a soft reboot, basically. We're doing it different this time. And this also is not good, but it's not good for very different reasons. It's not good for the same reasons that a character like Adam the Extreme, who is created in the 90s, is not a good comic character. It's too silly. The 90s, we were so obsessed with high octane, extreme, and there's a moment at which you're like, yeah, we're actually going fast in the car. And there's another moment where you're like, why won't this guy shut up about how fast we're going in the car? And that's where we get to with a lot of these films. Wes Craven's New Nightmare, not a great film, but emblematic of the time and worth your watch for this 90s movie marathon.
Okay. And then next up, we have...
Now
I wrote the wrong one down in the comment. That's okay. I flipped
That's
them.
okay. So I threw in Wes Craven's New Nightmare because I wanted to establish the idea that some of these aren't going to be good, and you need to know that. But I don't want to stack all the bad ones together and have a block of really crappy movies. So I broke it up a little bit, and here we have a nice little palate cleanser in The Faculty. Again, this is more about the tropes than it is really scary. It's the Power Rangers setup of recruit five teenagers with attitude is such a, that's Buffy, that's The Craft. All of them are just like recruit teenagers with attitude plus horror tropes. So this is Invasion of the Body Snatchers, but with teens being teens. And look at this group. We've got Josh Hartnett, we've got Elijah Wood, we've got Clea Duvall, we've got Jordana Brewster, Sean Hattasey, and then Usher, thank you. I forget the blonde girl's name. It's not Mina Suvari, but it's one of those.
Daisy Adair from...
No, we already did Clea Duvall.
Daisy Adair from, Dead Like Me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, this is about playing with the tropes. This isn't about being like the scariest movie you're ever going to see. It's also, the Faculty.
Laura Harris.
What's that?
Laura Harris. Yes, it is.
Laura Harris.
That's the blonde girl?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. The faculty at the school includes Salma Hayek, Famke Janssen, Jon Stewart. This is an all-star cast. It's a really fun film. Phenomenal soundtrack. Rockabye dude. Sean
McCain.
No.
Oh.
Oh wait. Oh yeah. Damn.
Not Sean Colvin.
Everything's gonna be alright. Rockabye.
Yeah.
Rockabye.
Oh god. I gotta think. Oh, Sean Mullins. Sean Mullins doing Changes by David Bowie.
By Garbage.
Medication by Garbage. Yep. One-off band Neve, who I fell in love with from their song on this soundtrack and followed around. Was sure they were going to make it. They did not. A remake of Another Brick in the Wall with like a stupid cast of... This is the funniest era. Soundtracks from this era are so good. I'm obsessed with so many of them.
Every soundtrack from this era was either trying to be Boys in the Hood or Pulp Fiction.
Yeah, it's a crazy mix. But this is also the same time that Puff Daddy and what's his name from Led Zeppelin do Come With Me, where he's playing the riff from Kashmir.
Come With Me.
Which I want to tell you all, I'm going to admit this live on air. I've told Nico this before, but that was my bar mitzvah psych up song. So this whole era as far as soundtracks go is wild. This is on here as much for that as it is because it's a great horror movie. It's not going to change your life, but Invasion of the Body Snatchers has had so many different remakes, a lot of which are bad, and this one's pretty fun. And if you were wondering what it was like to be a teenager in the 90s, this is not an accurate depiction, but it's a fun one.
The accurate part is that everybody is uncontrollably lusting after USHERRAYMOND.
Or Josh Hartnett, and we're still not sure why. but we still are. So go figure.
Or Famke Johnson or Jordana
yeah,
Brewster.
everyone.
Or
Um,
frankly, BB Newirth if you were gay
yeah.
and into Broadway.
Yeah. The fact that the movie doesn't end with her just kicking all the aliens out of the school. Big waste of a script there, guys. You really could have written it the way it should have been. But anyway, I love this one.
From one high school to another, we
Yep.
have disturbing
again,
behavior.
this is a Pepsi Coke moment. This is another kind of invasion of the body snatchers, Stepford children.
And it looks like Jason Marsden is on the poster twice. James Marsden is on the poster.
He does, yeah.
This is not a great film, but again, like, it's just funny, these historical documents of let's pull a horror trope and let's throw it into a high school. All of the high schools are different. You know, this one is in like upstate, or this is in Washington State. This is on like Puget Sound, where Buffy is down in LA. The Craft is similarly in California, but like probably Pasadena area. It's just like, it's very funny to see what different production teams decided they wanted to depict an American high school in the 90s as, and what they thought the concerns of young people were. And, you know, a lot of these films you can pit against the other teen movies of the era that are not horror movies. Things like She's All That, Save the Last Dance. Oh gosh.
War Games.
Thank you. You are the worst. It's just a weird time, and this is a stupid movie, but it's still on the list.
You know, the thing that I think this movie needs maybe a little bit of acknowledgement for is that it was trying to straddle the line between the horror genre and just like a dramatic movie.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, this is much less, this has less attitude for the sake of like the jokes.
Yeah.
And is much more like teen angst is valid. Let's dig into it a little bit, but also they've all got microchips.
I'm just glad to see that Anthony Rapp was getting work in the 90s.
Truly. And then he would grow up to be one of the bad guys in The Matrix Reloaded. So
let's keep it pushing.
That's what my Lamaze coach used to say.
Let's push this. Let's make this movement. Explain yourself.
Again, Cool J does not need to apologize ever at any point
for anything.
Any decision he makes.
I mean, this is again a very cunty cast. We've got Jamie Lee Curtis, just premenopausal. We've got Michelle Williams, trying to grow out of that Dawson's Creek era. Again, Josh Hartnett just taking work where he gets it, just being that teen heartthrob. LL Cool J, sexiest lips in the business. This is a bad movie. This is a bad remake. It's going to take a hot minute. What?
I know this girl from Whatever It Takes, the Mark Swan movie.
Oh, there you go. I have no idea who it is. This is a bad remake, but again, so is Wes Craven's New Nightmare. This was an era in which studios were doing the thing that they are still doing now, which is saying, like, what do we own? What do we got? What can we get people to go see in theaters? Make a movie out of it. I think there was much less of a concern about quality and much more of a feeling that consumers were kind of dumb. And pre-internet, it was easier to trick people into going to see something that was basically bad, because it was connected to a lineage. And we're still doing the same thing now. Studios are still saying, what do we own? What can we churn out? What can we get onto our streaming platform to get subscribers or keep subscribers happy? But I think the collective consciousness of all of us talking online has resulted in more attempts to do better stuff. I think it fails a lot, but I feel like I see stuff that is a little less blindly. Maybe I'm even taking that back. It's all still bad, but it's just bad in different ways.
Well, let's talk about bad in different ways then.
Yeah.
And you need to defend this next one.
Go for it. Throw it up.
Jason Goes to Hell is
Yeah.
the floor.
Yeah.
Like, I built a house, and then I built a basement, and then I built a sub-basement.
Yeah.
And then I dug a tunnel to hell. And below that was this movie.
Yep. Like I said, this is about the era. This is about the 90s. We were churning them out. Some of them were great. Some of them are Scream. Some of them are Jason Goes to Hell. Some of them are just people know Friday the 13th. They will go see this movie.
But there's literally a penis coming out of that Dr. Doom mask.
I know. This is not a good movie, guys, but I so distinctly remember how hyped so many people were for it. The final Friday. And of course it's not. Jason Goes to Space like 2 years after this. But it's that 90s, pedal to the floor. It doesn't get any crazier than this. And then it's really not that crazy. It's not even good. This is all part of the 90s horror experience. If I had to go through it, you have to go through it too. That is my movie marathon.
Well, I actually want to comment, not to blow past Jason's low point.
Yeah.
But you sort of put that is not Michael Myers' low point. I'm sorry. Halloween Resurrection is infinitely worse. But
yeah, that's probably true.
And it's unfortunate that Busta gives a pretty fun performance in that movie and can't be celebrated the way LL gets celebrated in the previous film. Just kind of putting out there that rappers had a weird run of only being allowed to be in horror movies in the 90s. Weird, unfortunate situation. Oh, except Vanilla Ice was allowed to be in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2. Different kind of horror. But
different kind of horror.
The next movie in your list actually exemplifies why these two movies maybe didn't work. Please tell me the supernatural force in Scream 2. Other than Laurie Metcalf's unbelievable performance, Jada Pinkett Smith revealing this morning that she and Will Smith haven't lived in the same house for 7 years, in part because he is so busy looking after young, attractive Latino boys.
So guys, please go back to our bracket from, was it last week or was it 2 weeks ago?
It was recent.
I'll bring up the link.
Yeah, please do.
I forgot Sarah was in this because she was not in any of the marketing.
No. We did a bracket of our favorite horror villains 2 weeks ago, and I was pretty devastated when Nico and Kevo ganged up on me and would not let me get Debbie Metcalf through till the final round. Debbie Salt, Laurie Metcalf through to the final round. Phenomenal actor. So good in this movie. Sarah Michelle Gellar shows up weirdly to be the Drew Barrymore, to get the iconic murder scene. But they're also TK, if you could pause for 1 second. Tasty, would you mind writing out what you mean by, got it. I was like, wait, no, Michael Shanks is the best thing about Stargate. And also when he gets buff in the later seasons, it's stupid hot. Oh, got it. I was going to be like, please write out whatever your problem with Michael Shanks is so I can know. And then I caught it. I'm so sorry. That's his wife, I believe. So yeah, we actually get a double because we get Jada Pinkett, who has the intro scene, which is the same as Drew Barrymore's. But then we have Sarah Michelle Gellar.
That is not Omar Epps.
Yeah.
I've never realized that his house is Omar Epps.
And I distinctly remember that scene really disturbed me a lot more than the Drew Barrymore scene, because the fact that she was in public and it just ends with her getting up on the stage, the screen, to scream in front of everybody because she has been murdered and nobody helps her is so disturbing in a way that, like, you're going to be murdered alone in your house is something that we're all scared of. When you're a little kid and you stay alone at home for the first time, you're scared of every noise. But the idea that you could be in a public place and just be gutted and nobody helps you is disturbing in its own way. And it really, that is Scream 2's first announcement that it is not fucking around when it comes to upping the ante and playing with the genre.
And just to comment, the cover also, this poster really reflects I believe it's Salvador Dali image that is captured on the cover of the movie poster for Silence of the Lambs. the skull created by the nude women.
Yeah.
I think there's something really much more intense about the eyes on this cover than perhaps in the Drew Barrymore image from Scream 1 that
Yep.
really captures that atmosphere of serial killer terror from Silence of the Lambs in a way that perhaps Scream just felt a little bit, maybe even Phantom of the Opera-y with just the big white face.
It also, when you look at these, they're the micro eras of fashion that you get. Like Sydney is much more like boho chic with her long hair and the puffy bangs.
Sarah Michelle Gellar, Cruel Intentions. Like,
Yeah.
seriously, it's
Well, in the original, she's much softer. She's like much frumpier in what she wears.
much more Jennifer Love Hewitt Party of Five.
Yeah, exactly. And then we get to Scream 2, and everybody has these layered haircuts. Everybody is giving bedroom eyes. Gail Weathers, Courtney Cox, has phenomenal purple streaks in her hair. Everybody is just looking sexy as hell and very horny.
Yeah, David Arquette is looking like a fucking 7.2 out of 12, and that is really his ceiling.
Yeah, that's, this is the best it's going to get for him, and I really respect what he did with it. Jerry O'Connell trying really hard not to be the chubby kid from Stand By Me.
And all of the work he's had done since this film seems to seek to keep him looking like Nev Campbell in this film.
Exactly. But this is just a phenomenal sequel, and it's of the era. It's just great.
Kevo, did you have any relationship with the Scream films before I was like, hey, you have to watch all three with me before we go see the fourth one for my birthday?
Not until after they were all released, but yes. I definitely saw all of them while we were still in the era of VHS because I have vivid memories of the Blockbuster boxes and renting them and finally watching them one summer. At the time they were coming out again, I was kind of a big baby, so they probably weren't for me at the time. And then by the time I finally watched them in high school, they seemed like no big deal.
Yeah. That's the really fun thing. They really are kind of no big deal.
And it's not because they're not frightening, because there is a level of fear to the Scream movies, but so much of the Scream fear effect is just like blood, stab. And then we get into an era where the fear effect is like literally cut open stem to sternum the way is described in Scream, but is shown in great detail in later films. I can't even imagine what a modern remake of Flatliners would look like. So, but I think... Oh,
go ahead.
No, please.
No, I was going to say, it looks like Tasty Cake has guessed what is in store for us next.
Oh, Tasty Cake. I just want to comment that, if you're asking me, at night I lay in bed with static in my head. I don't know how to trust myself when I don't know what's real. So I ask myself, how do I deal with you? How do I deal with me? I am trying to allude to I Know What You Did Last Summer's sequel. I Still Know What You Did Last Summer featured the most awkward attempt to blast my precious JLH's music into boomboxes across America with her then boyfriend, Carson Daly, who at that point still had his part-time job at the Home Depot mixing paint. He put How Do I Deal, which to this day, I could literally, I'm sitting at my piano. It is everything in me not to rock out to How Do I Deal. It is a really interesting thing that Jennifer Love Hewitt probably would have been as successful as a musician as she ultimately was as an actress. But America doesn't really see people two ways. So you can either be a sort of syndication TV actress, or you can sort of be an easy listening supermarket chanteuse. Those are your two choices. And I think I Still Know What You Did Last Summer kind of highlights the Jennifer Love Hewitt difficulty that so few women outside of Vicki Lawrence's turn on the Carol Burnett show and The Night the Lights Went Out in Georgia have ever had the opportunity to express. This is my favorite Jennifer Love Hewitt song, and I could go on about this for an hour. TK, save me from myself.
This is the Pepsi Coke thing.
No, this is the real deal. This soundtrack.
The soundtrack for this is it has
Orgy's
moments.
Blue Monday. Orgy's Blue Monday. Hey Now Now. Those are hits.
I'm sorry. This is the real deal.
I mean, it's funny as shit. Like it is so stupid. And it's supposed to be stupid. Again, like so many of these movies aren't that scary. Have very funny moments.
Jonah Hill has come a really long way.
You are the worst kind of person. But I actually really love that they replaced Sarah Michelle Gellar with Brandy. Again, it's just we're in an era where, I mean, there's just not enough black people, especially in horror, and to get Brandy and Mekhi Phifer to replace Sarah Michelle Gellar and Ryan Phillippe, both of whom are phenomenal but weren't well used in their movie, so we might as well move on and try something different.
Mekhi Phifer got ER from this. Like, he didn't go on to be a slouch.
Yeah. That we go to an entirely different location. It is not the greatest horror movie of all time, but it's
an attempt.
What's that?
It is an attempt to do something.
It's an attempt, exactly, and it is emblematic of that desire to capitalize and do more with something.
I'm pan like a wok, so I completely agree with JLH. Seriously, anytime. And this movie is maybe the height of her looking lovely before she becomes like clearly a definitive woman. All of her appearances after this, she chooses to elevate her look. She wants to be taken seriously as an adult actress. I think in a lot of ways, I Still Know What You Did Last Summer must have been some sort of contractual obligation where she was like, okay, I can be cute and playful one more time before I decide to be taken seriously as an actress. I feel like Brandy never really got the opportunity to be taken seriously as an actress. Her music career would flame out shortly thereafter. She's had some hits. Full Moon was definitely a high point. And just this last year, she released a duet with Mariah Carey, a remake of a song called The Roof. But that song is also from right around I Still Know What You Did Last Summer. So, Oh, wow. There is an interesting connection between Brandy and I Still Know What You Did Last Summer and Rebecca Gayheart and Urban Legend.
Yep. Oh, yes, there is. And people should Google that on their own time if they want to know some interesting real-life horror facts. And for now, and that's really funny because it's Rebecca Gayheart in here.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, is Rebecca Gayheart there too?
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow. That is okay. Urban Legend, I think for
also
me,
Google facts about Jared Leto if we want to be unbiased.
Wait, is that Joshua Jackson in
Yes.
Urban
Yes,
Legend?
it is.
Yep.
This is what he had that bleach blonde look for.
No, he had it for
Legends.
exactly, and he just transferred right on to this.
Wow, the number of actors from these 7 movies that made 245 movies together. This is ScarJo and Chris Evans levels of
This
nonstop
cast is wild.
incest.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and I mean that's part of it too.
Rosenbaum?
These were,
Yes.
Tara Reid.
Oh my God! Before the shark boobs,
who we thought were the hot actors of the time, and so of course they are in. They're in these films. I love Urban Legend. I think more than any of the others because I was getting into high school age when this came out, and so high school had been a little bit demystified to me.
And now, is college, kids.
This is college. Now I'm looking to the future. Now I'm wondering what college is going to be like, and it seems like it's
her in this overcoat.
I know.
College. That is a college woman.
She is an adult. She has a job.
But she's really just the female lead in Cecil B. Demented for those of us in the know.
She has keys and she's very busy and her shoes go clack, clack, clack.
got a big bag for all a big handbag for all of her stuff. You know, Joshua Jackson is an adult. He can bleach his hair if he wants to.
You know, one of the things I just want to say about Joshua Jackson is he always had a very adult face.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that a lot of these movies capitalized on. They used people like Ryan Felipe, who always had a boyish face, compared with somebody like Freddie Prinze Jr., who, for all of his boyish mannerisms, looked like a man. And somebody like Joshua Jackson always had a very manly face, and that allowed this movie to have a little bit more of an adult feel. This whole cast, like you're saying, feels college.
Yeah.
And they didn't really work to de-escalate that feeling. I think this movie tried to have a sexier vibe. Oh, Tasty Cake, Cecil B. Demented was one of my, like, you know, oh, there's no Skinamax tonight. Oh, Cecil B. Demented is on. Demented forever, demented for life. I knew the entire rap at one point, actually.
That does
This
not
is
surprise
why
me.
This is why I sit like this, and this is why millennials have back problems.
It's 100% true.
We all sit like this.
Michael
Exactly.
Rosenbaum, I can like literally imagine his chest hair under that white tank top. This guy is just so, everything about him could not work in And I Know What You Did Last Summer, because he feels like an adult man.
Yep. He's a real man. Tara Reid is very much, you know, a sexy, mature girl with those they're probably pleather pants.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, I also, I love an urban legend. So I thought the concept behind this movie was especially fun. I really just, to me, in a lot of ways, even though this is a really stupid movie, it's kind of the culmination of this whole thing. This is 1998, so we're really coming towards the end, and all of the other ones came before this, really leading up to something that is out of high school, a little more mature, has a concept behind it, is pulling from new tropes for horror. It's not grabbing the old ones, and it's kind of sending us into what's going to be the next wave, where we start to see things like Paranormal Activity that's really trying to do something new with the genre and how we present it, and just this wave of new horror that comes after.
I more vividly remember Urban Legend 2, and
Oh God.
I have a very proud memory of, I guessed the killer the moment we met them.
Yeah.
And I felt very vindicated when I was right, because I was only a sophomore. So, you know, you feel like you went to film school already, but you don't realize it's just Urban Legend Final Cut.
Now, I do want to ask you a question. Were there other films? There's one more after this, I think.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to ask you, sort of, because I thought Urban Legend created a genre, which was kind of maybe the embarrassing Scream ripoff. There's the well-intentioned Scream ripoff. Then there's the bad Scream ripoff. And then there's John Cusack's Identity, which is the intersection of problematic, good Scream movie and Urban Legend going right up the middle, if you know what I mean, kind of like where the good Lord split you. What stops an Identity from being on this list, but allows an Urban Legends, other than, say, time? Just the fact that I think Identity was 2003, because I think I drove to it.
I mean, that is a big part of it. This was really meant to be... Yeah, you're right. It is 2003.
Yeah, I knew I drove to it.
This really was about the 90s. So, you know, that is a really big reason. Yeah, I'll keep it there, because I could say other things about Identity, but it's...
Oh my God, that it's the best first hour of a movie and the worst last 25 minutes of any movie ever.
There you go.
My birthday's also a holiday. Get out of here, calendar man. All right, let's boop bop into the final.
But not least,
Oh man,
the
guys,
only
this
film on your list I've never seen.
Holy shit! Really?
I've never seen it. Jolie Richardson.
Yeah.
Oh, it's really hard
From
to get me to
Golden
watch-
Palace.
I think you mean from Desperate Housewives.
I think you mean
oh,
from Nip
okay.
Tuck.
I think you mean from Ellen.
I think
do
you
mean
mean
from
from Sandman.
Wait, I think a bunch of us are saying Jolie Fisher roles.
You could be right. No, mine are Jolie. I'm correct. Mine are Jolie Richardson.
You're right.
I
wish it was Jolie Fisher.
Oh, fact.
I've made this mistake before, so I was very concerned. But yeah, my two were Nip Tuck and Sandman, and I fucking nailed it because I always do.
This is unrelated, but Tasty Cake saying Identity Crisis.
Yeah, Tasty Cake, it really did. That's why it's not on this
My
list.
bad.
It wanted to be a 90s movie, but it's not. This also
in the right corner for Tasty Cake and Tori to just be the Waldorf and Statler of our show.
I love it.
Comment as we need.
Last thing we need.
This is just kind of on here because, so this comes out in 2000. So, I'm skirting that line of 90s horror. This is just a really phenomenal genre film. I think it's really great horror. It mixes science fiction and horror in a way that, like, most of the films on my list, with the exception of a film like The Craft, which mixes fantasy, witchcraft, and horror, most of them are the horror tropes kind of completely separated from anything else. You've got a lot of slashers in there, which, there's nothing supernatural, there's nothing science fiction, it's just murder, murder, murder. And even like your Nightmare on Elm Streets or your Jason Goes to Hell, there kind of is a fantasy element to it, but that never really comes up. That's not a part of it. This is really about how our attempts to pull a Star Trek and get to the stars could go horribly wrong and result in a horror film. And that is a particular kind of horror genre that I really love. I think that's something that you see a lot in something like the Magnus Archives, where a lot of the scenarios and the stories in an individual episode are just, I was trying to do this completely normal thing and I stumbled into a horror movie. Imagine how this normal thing would be horrifying if you added an element that is typical to the horror genre.
That's, I think, one of the things that so many movies from this era had in mind. They were like, how can we bring together multiple eras of filmmaking? I think about like Abyss, like The Abyss by James Cameron.
Yeah. Yep.
And how that is kind of a horror movie, but kind of not a horror movie.
Yep.
And when I was looking at a list of all of the most successful horror movies by year, the number of horror movies that are not horror movies, Prometheus, not a horror movie. Scary Movie, not a horror movie, but they kind of are. So
yep.
I think Event Horizon is, as you're saying, an exploration of the ideas that set up the notion of horror as a multifaceted genre. I think about Santa Clarita Diet, and I think about how, The Haunting of Hill House, and how those are two of the best streaming horror shows of their eras. And yet comparing them is comparing, Citizen Kane to Freaks, two great movies from their eras, but certainly not movies that have anything particularly in common other than their excellence.
Yeah.
So, I love your list, TK. I think it really is what's what of some of the coolest 90s from horror. Coolest horror from 90s. But what do you think, looking back at this, having talked it out, what do you feel is the definitive hallmark of your list?
I mean, ultimately, it's probably Scream. There are ways in which I want to say The Craft, I want to say The Faculty, and I want to say Urban Legend. But ultimately, Scream is kind of the fulcrum point around which everything rotates. Even the stuff that comes before kind of is leading up to Scream. It's testing the 90s horror waters to figure out what is a strong point to plant fertile soil. Scream is that thing, and then everything that comes after is sort of trying to figure out how to play in the field that seems to be bounded around Scream. And I think some things are really successful, and some things kind of some things are really successful but fail financially. Some things are successful financially but I think are failures as films. And it's just, this was all about capturing the feeling of an era through a genre. I could make this list out of just teen comedies. I could make it out of dramas. I could make it out of science fiction, fantasy. You know, there's so many great movies that came out in the 90s. But I was really excited when Kevo suggested doing a horror marathon, because really I was only realized significantly later in life that I had this huge history with the genre. It was just my history. It was entirely its own thing. And, you know, I haven't so much kept up with the Conjurings, the Saws, all of the Paranormal Activity, stuff that I think has been really popular and synonymous with horror post 2000. But this was where I was at for a whole decade. So thank you guys so much for letting me share it.
Well, that's, you know, the whole point of this show. The idea behind, you know, X's for Show is an exploration of the media that defines us, that reshapes our experience, and the sort of media that we want to create in our future. So, you know, the idea that we're talking about Buffy, we're talking about Scream, we're talking about I Know What You Did Last Summer. These aren't just films and TV shows, but these are things that define the medium. You know, when you were talking about things like Buffy and Scream both being part of the same oeuvre, even though there's clear ways that they're not, I can't help but notice that that's Joss Whedon and Kevin Williamson, who would go on to define the WB as a network, as writers of the shows that define us as creators. So, you know, your list really has legs.
Thank you.
Kevo, any last thoughts on the movie marathon list, Kevo?
I think it was a really good smorgasbord of a lot of different genres, a lot of different concepts. You know, for me, this is more a Halloween marathon thing. A lot of my stuff isn't horror, and a lot of even your horrific stuff wasn't necessarily what most would brand the most terrifying of horror. And I think that was really cool of it. There were things that were genuinely scary, and there were things that were a little bit on the lighter side while still definitely qualifying as horror. And I look forward to seeing what you come up with next year, sir.
I'm excited.
You know, and I think that's part of what we're looking to create here with, you know, these marathon lists. It's not so much the definitive, but it's like, hey, if you're interested in movies, TK has a list for you. If you're interested in TV, I'm pretty sure that Kevo has a pretty cool list for you. And I have a pretty cool list, I think, of experiential horror. But I think first up, we're going to take a short commercial break. And when we come back, we're going to dive into those other lists, right? And we'll go from there, right? But one of the things I want to say is thank you, everybody who's been liking, commenting. We hope you guys subscribe, check out some of our other amazing videos here on X's for Show. And we can't wait to bring you more content. So, Kevo, you got that commercial ready to go?
We'll be back in a minute.
Welcome back to X's for Show, your premier media response show. Now, this week we are not responding to new media, but rather our Halloween and spooky, scary standards. Now, TK has given us an amazing list of horror movies that focus predominantly on like 1992 to 2000. But one of the things that it really stoked in me were the things that like kind of accelerated my love of horror as a kid that led me to being a guy who, you know, actually does create things in sort of like spooky horror genres. Kevo and I have a comic book, Kid Riot. And one of the big things about Kid Riot is that it likes to explore different genres. Now, you've seen some comments from Tori Sheehan, an amazing collaborator of ours, one of the co-creators of Kid Riot and its spin-offs. And in the course of that material, we've explored things like action, adventure, the general superhero genre, and direct implications of like horror, nightmarescape stuff. And one of the things that I think is so important to consider is that while we think of horror as its own genre, horror really is part of every genre we think about, whether it's fantasy, whether, you know, because like Kevo, you're always bringing up how elves and dark elves are such perfect balances of each other. When you're a kid, you hear all about elves, but it's not until you're like 14, 15 that, you know, horror fiction starts to incorporate folk tales like dark elves quite as directly. And I think, TK, your list, without highlighting things like, you know, Gremlins or Leprechaun, really managed to capture a lot of that same energy.
One of the things I've really come to love is when horror intersects with another genre. It's that thing that I was talking about with Event Horizon. Like it's a science fiction film. They're in a spaceship. They are traveling to other worlds. And then a horror movie comes in because an element of the science fiction thing leads to something horrific and scary. I love, when people try and do magic and they touch the elder gods. It's the magicians when they first introduce the beast in the first book, and they're just kids at magic school. This is just Harry Potter for a slightly different demographic, and then they meet this thing that they first believed to be such an incomprehensible presence that what they saw was just this little piece of it that utterly annihilated one of them. And that's horrifying that you could touch that kind of power just trying to get your education. That's where the genre is so exciting and fun, and where you can pull it in to something that you're saying, well, this isn't a horror book, it's a magic school book, but I've added this element that's going to keep you on your toes for the rest of the series.
And I think that's even part of where my list kind of comes in. Now, while TK went for predominantly horror films, now I want to say specifically horror films from the 90s. TK's list certainly did not exclude any horror elements, but you said zombies were not a big deal in the 90s, and they really weren't the way they were a big deal well before the 90s, the 70s, the 60s. How many iterations of Night of the Living Dead have we had, and how many modern iterations have we had as well? So I do feel like, by specifically noting that it is 90s iterations of horror, it's a really important part of the conversation. And Kevo, your list focuses a little bit more on, I want to say, not necessarily television programs, but a more serialized sense of horror in a line of stories.
Yeah, more short form, light fare type of situation. Yeah.
Now, I tried to focus on something a little bit different. I wanted to capture the idea of experiential horror. Now, experiential horror for me starts with things like horror musicals and experiences like the Haunted Mansion in Disney World and Disneyland. But the real idea behind experiential horror is that you are afraid in the moment. And so I tried to cover a lot of different forms of experiential horror. Kevo, if you would be kind enough to pull up some of the amazing slides you've composed for my list.
Heck yeah.
Now, Kevo said 24 hours of horror, and I said, how do you do 24 hours of horror? Okay, so I wanted to make it human and accessible to everybody, so we went with YouTube playlists. I tried to create experiential horror playlists that would allow you to interact with the ideas I'm presenting. So we have Haunted Mansion, Tower of Terror, and Alien Encounter, representing the holy trifecta of fear in the Disney parks. TK, what you got?
So, but part of this is also you could go do all of these.
Yeah.
Some of them are defunct. Some of them no longer.
Unfortunately, yeah. Some of them are
but
pretty defunct. But
in general, this is, also a suggestion that maybe you head to the park and have these experiences.
Or any park. Maybe there are experiences in your area too.
Fright Fest at Six Flags,
encouraging you to find your own.
Get to a haunted hayride.
Because I am certainly part of the capitalist machine that worships at the altar of Disney. But one of the other things that I am certainly a fan of is the idea of, like we said earlier, incorporating folk horror, the idea that there are horror elements unique to your area. And as somebody from the New Jersey area, right near the New England area where TK is from, we are no strangers to those sorts of ideas of like localized horror. And that's even part of what the Haunted Mansion from the Disney park seeks to create. It seeks to illustrate the idea that horror is unique to different areas. Each Haunted Mansion at each Disney park is located in a different land. Each one of those lands represents a different idea and a different identity to that culture. For instance, while Florida certainly doesn't have a unique relationship with colonial times, it has the idea of Liberty Square, which is different than New Orleans Square back in Disneyland. So while New Orleans Square is a plantation, Liberty Square is a little bit more a Victorian mansion. And then all of the other international haunted mansions follow suit with their own vibe based on their land. Now, Tower of Terror initially didn't have that same feeling, but ultimately over time, Disney would change the Tower of Terror vibe with I think Tokyo had the first unique park, and then Hong Kong might have had it next. I could be mistaken on the order of that. But one of the big things that I think is really important to consider is that whether you've been to Disney World or Disneyland's Haunted Mansion or Tower of Terror, you have had a unique experience based on the sort of like local custom. Kevo, you've been on both sets of both. Is there one that you kind of connect to more between Haunted Mansion and Tower of Terror, between Disney and Disneyland? Oh, I'm sorry, Disney World and Disneyland. When you've worked for one, you call that one Disney, and you call the other by its full name.
So like between all four, or one for one and one for the other?
Oh, one for one and one for one.
I definitely probably appreciate the... I mean, I'm a hometown boy, so I appreciate all the Florida stuff a little bit more. I like our Tower of Terror a little bit more, especially because it's still Tower of Terror. I'm what?
Well, and
and it does,
vertically
exactly.
and horizontally. One literally does what just an elevator does, and one moved forward.
Yeah.
TK, of these three attractions, do you have a relationship with any of them, all of them, to some extent, multiple versions?
Alien Encounter, man.
Yeah.
I wasn't like I think of myself as a very scared person. Like I get scared easily. And especially like when I was a little kid, I thought I scared very easily. I also to this day go into any doctor's office thinking a blood draw or a shot is going to be horrible. I am tattooed. I go to the doctor all the time. Never since I was like 5 years old. None of those things bother me. Getting shots doesn't hurt. Getting blood drawn doesn't really hurt. But I go in so nervous that it is going to be the most painful experience of my life. And horror experiences are a lot of the same thing. Where like, if I go to a haunted house, I think, I'm just going to have a mental breakdown here because I'm a big scaredy cat. And then I go and I'm completely fine. So I remember going into Alien Encounter being like, I probably die here. I probably am not going to make it out of this. And I remember just having the time of my life. I'm weirdly, like, I'm a very, stimuli kill me. I'm oversensitive to a lot of stimuli. It is a, like, birth condition. And for some reason, showing up voluntarily to something that stimulates multiple senses, and the ones you don't think about too, like the air brushing on you, the feeling of like things skittering around your feet that Alien Encounter pulls together, actually for me is a lot better than just blaring lights and sirens. And I just remember having such a fun time at Alien Encounter. And it was really one of those moments, you know, kind of like figuring out how much I loved all these 90s horror movies where I was like, yeah, like I'm kind of into some of this stuff.
And I just want to point out that one of the things that's important to consider about what you're talking about is that when we say experiential horror, we're not talking about watching horror. We're talking about like fourth dimension horror. Things are sprayed on you. People jump out at you. In the case of Alien Encounter, it's a multitude of sensory experiences from smells, breath, like there's sensations of wetness on your neck and things touching your legs. You know, I really love that you describe yourself as a scaredy cat, because I actually am famous for when I go through these haunted houses screaming, and that is a performer, and that is why I am afraid. And, you know, bracing myself and talking through it.
Yeah.
You know, when we're talking about these three attractions, I think perhaps the reason I am skipping over Haunted Mansion a little bit readily is because we have done an incredible episode. These two gentlemen gave me a 3.5 hour opportunity to talk about why Haunted Mansion is like the hallmark of childhood fear for so many of us. And Tower of Terror is a little bit hard to talk about. If you are a fan of Guardians of the Galaxy, Guardians of the Galaxy Breakout over in Disneyland is an unbelievable experience, and they're not looking to recreate it over in Disney World, where they've received Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind over in Epcot. So Tower of Terror is sort of a dying breed. Other Tower of Terrors don't involve terror, but rather mysticism. The Asian Disney parks have a very different standard for what is acceptable in terms of mysticism and the supernatural by virtue of local custom. And that is so important to consider, that the Disney parks do incorporate that into the attraction design. So this idea of the truly scary Tower of Terror is sort of a dying breed, and it's definitely worth considering. Now, Paris's is also really incredible. But for me, it'll always be the Lake Buena Vista Hollywood Studios version located in Florida that really challenges the paradigm of fear. No elevator should move forward and backward. What the fuck is wrong with you, Disney? And that's
a turbo lift.
That's a turbo lift, motherfucker. Alien Encounter, for those who don't know, Alien is my literal favorite franchise of anything ever. If I thought we could literally just have Alien is for podcast and Alien is for show, that would...
We did
for like 4 months. That was all we did.
We did so much Alien stuff. I listened to the audio drama of the third movie. What do you mean if we could? We literally did for 6 months. If we could, what didn't we do? Don't answer that question. Instead, I want to answer Bruno Campos's question. He said, could you describe the Alien Encounter experience? Not sure I've tried it. From Portugal. I want to say real quick first, I've already dropped it in the comments, and I've been flashing it, but we made a playlist of all of the videos that Nico is referring to here. The slides from this episode are in a Facebook album that I have dropped in the comments that I've also been flashing. So if you want to read the slides a little bit in more detail, check us out on Facebook, X's for Show. And you can find those there. And you can also find the playlist with all of the videos that Nico is referring to that add up to 24 hours of amazing, insightful, intellectual, informative, awesome, detailed experiences. Really cool, amazing work that Nico did. And we put it all into a playlist on our channel. But if you want to, by all means, Nico, talk about Alien Experience, because I know you wish this had been a xenomorph situation and you like to pretend that it's that alien. I used to think that it was. I thought it was the xenomorph, and that was part of why that was part of what terrified me and what kept me away as a kid.
So Alien Encounter is a super wonderful, complex, multi-stage attraction. You would get queued up and told that you have entered the technology, sort of like the technological center of the future at XS Tech or XS Corp, and you would see a demonstration of a teleportation machine, but it goes horribly wrong and it turns the cute little alien inside out. But no worries, you should just keep going along with the demonstration. And you're brought into a room where they're hoping to teleport an alien, but instead they bring in a frightening monster that is on par with the xenomorph from Alien. And you are then subjected to a total blackout, and you would feel things wrap across your neck, and then you would feel things grab at your legs, and you would feel like it was literally, truly to create the feeling that the alien was upon you at all times.
It's sort of an interactive theater experience. You're
Yes.
queued in the line, you go, and for most of it, you're sitting down. and you are in like it's kind of a wraparound amphitheater with the center being kind of where all of the action is happening, and you are watching, you know, this story unfold, but then you're also present you're in the story. You have been brought in as the audience for this real life thing. And then it starts to actually interact with you in these very sensory ways.
And part of the idea was that you were part of the story. You know, when Michael Eisner was reimagining the Disney parks experience, it was no longer that you went to a theme park, it was that you experienced the theme park, which is a really big part of where so much of my list is considered experiential. Now, if you want to know a little bit more about each one of these amazing Disney attractions, you can check out the list of videos that Kevo's provided in the playlist. And I sort of came up with how this represents, I think it's like 4.5 hours of my list. Between these couple of videos, I do want to point out that any video labeled by Martin Videos is going to go deep into the kind of technology behind the scenes. It may demystify some of this stuff for you, so I don't always recommend anything labeled Martin Videos if you were somebody who wants to stay magically blinded. Oh my gosh, Bruno, that's amazing. Yes, that is where it was. It was in
is
Orlando.
at Disney. Yep.
Yes, amazing stuff, Bruno. I love that. Now, the Tower of Terror, there's very few people who have done every Tower of Terror all over the world. So I've tried to put together a list that kind of points out the big points, any updates. I've left out the remake into Guardians of the Galaxy because it just doesn't really fit the Tower of Terror modus. It's a little bit more just like a superhero story than like a fear-based horror story, but it is still pretty scary. So if you want to know more, definitely check out Guardians of the Galaxy Mission Breakout at Disneyland on YouTube. As far as the videos I've included for Alien Encounter, I've tried to include a kind of a reasonable list of like the Martin video that will give you the ride-through experience, but the Defunct Land videos, they break down everything in terms of what went into making the attraction, went into breaking the attraction, and what ultimately led to, I think in many ways, people thinking of Alien Encounter as the holy grail of Disney fear experiences. So if you want to know what it was like to go on Alien Encounter, check out the Martin video. But if you want to know the sort of BTS that makes the whole thing work, check out the 3 Defunct Land videos. By the way, Kevin Perger's brain is the sexiest thing on YouTube. So I just need to put that out there. Every now and then someone will be like, hey, have you ever seen that Fast Pass documentary on YouTube? And I'm like, yes, I have.
I've seen all of them.
All right. But from the Disney parks experience in the US, I had another set of experiential ideas that I was really excited to show. Kevo, if you would change the slide for me. Now, the idea of Disney experiences sometimes goes beyond the attraction and goes into the unique show or the unique production. And the Disney parks around the world put together unique experiences just at Halloween time, not the attractions that you can ride year round, but things like the Hocus Pocus Villain Spectacular, the Boo to You Parade Hollow Wishes, Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party, which is a hard ticket event, which means you got to spend like $140 to get into the park after hours. It's a little bit of a bummer. I wish things were a little bit more affordable at Disney, but you know, we'll see what happens in the next couple of months as Iger tries to re-steer the company. The Oogie Boogie Bash out in California is a different experience, but it's definitely still the same sort of rare character party experience that you come to Disney for when you go to these hard ticket events. These hard ticket events, because they cost more, tend to have one-of-a-kind experiences, like somebody like Oogie Boogie will come out and meet you, or you can get a meet and greet with Jack and Sally. It's pretty unique. However, the Happiest Haunts tour is something that is unique to Disneyland, and it traces all of the coolest, like spooky experiences in Disneyland. Now, Kevo and I were lucky enough to do it back in 2012, I think it was, 2010. And so we got to do it when Tower of Terror was still part of the attraction experience. Since then, Tower of Terror is closed. The Guardians of the Galaxy attraction has replaced it. So I'm not sure what the Happiest Haunts tour is like now, but as somebody who's done the Walk and Walt's Footsteps tour in both parks, as somebody who's done Happiest Haunts, as somebody who's done a few behind the scenes tours, a couple of behind the scenes cast tours, I can tell you that Happiest Haunts, for its price, for the experience, is pretty amazing, pretty magical. So if you happen to make it out to Disneyland and you want to do something unique to Halloween, definitely check out the Happiest Haunts tour. I believe it's only offered during the Halloween season, but maybe it starts up in August a little bit earlier. Kevo, you have been to so many Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween parties. I only didn't give you pictures of me in my costume. That is right. As a former cast member, I did, in fact, dress up in the cast member Halloween costume. And I did work these parties night after night. And it was for the sweet, sweet cast discount that allowed me to afford to go to them.
My dream vacation for our family, including you, sir, is I want us to be able to go for that double up trip where we get to catch the last Halloween party and the first Christmas party, because I love the Disney Parks hard ticket events. They are so cute, so fun with their theming. Seeing all of the costumed characters in double costumes. It's ridiculous. It's fun. I love it. What year was it that we were the Disney Afternoon and we all wore just Disney Afternoon? I think it was 2012. We all just wore Disney Afternoon t-shirts, and I made us little name tags that said what our time slot was. And we had like a thing that was the logo for the Disney Afternoon. And you see so many people with cute concepts like that. I have a photo of you with those people where their costume is just the sandwich boards, and they're like a fast pass stub and a park ticket, photo pass, like all these cute things. I love it. It's we love Comic-Con and we love things like that, and that's sort of the energy, especially of the Halloween party where people dress up and just have a good time.
I worked so many of these Halloween parties. It really was one of my favorite things being a cast member. Getting to see things like the gravediggers in the Boo to You parade scrape their shovels along the asphalt of the Magic Kingdom, creating sparks that fly at the guests during the parade. It's just such a unique experience. It's such a magical moment because you don't expect it. You see these guys at the Haunted Mansion. What are they doing walking down Main Street? How are they throwing sparks at the crowd? It's so many layers that they put together. They start decorating in August. It's little things you might not notice. They start to put a little bit more orange and brown lining down Main Street as they slowly make the transition to autumnal colors. There is so much thought put into redesigning the Disney Parks experience to be Halloween and then Christmas and then, general holidays. They certainly do still hit Christmas, but it's more of a general holiday season these days. But I want to say it's not just things like the Boo to You parade, which, by the way, is the piece of music I arranged that's playing in the background. But there's a whole lot more options, and I'd love to get to my next slide. Oh, actually, I want to go to that side of my slide. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
I love the domestic parks, but the foreign parks do fear in a way that the domestic parks could never even begin to imagine. The Mickey's Halloween Celebration Parade in Disneyland is only here because I really love the piece of music, Halloween, Halloween. It is the campiest thing in maybe the history of Disneyland Paris. And I sent it to someone recently and they were like, this is terrible. And I was like, and I sent it to TK and he was like, wow, this is some incredible camp. And I think that's kind of what Halloween brings out in you. It either
I love this float though.
Oh, absolutely. That unbelievable Phantom Manor float. Yes, please.
Wild.
TK, I sent you that piece of Disneyland Paris Halloween music, and you responded to it a little bit more positively than I maybe expected. Was there something is there something about the idea that Disney loves Halloween the way it does that surprises you at all? Oh, but you're slightly muted, which is the spookiest thing of all.
I'm talking, but you can't hear me. No, it doesn't surprise me at all. Disney's gonna Disney. Disney's gonna take everything they have that is scary and do something for the scary season. Then they're gonna take everything that they have that's Christmassy and do something for the Christmas season. I love that. Might as well capitalize on it while you can. What really surprised me about that piece of music was that it was so genre bending. It was like a very sexy Tony Braxton song, but about Halloween. Like, it was so like, I mean, and that is, I have a lot more fun when Halloween is stupid and campy and pulling other genres in, like being like a sexy parade song, than when it is really trying to scare you. Because if it fails, then you've just wasted some money at whatever the thing is. But if you go in thinking like, I'm not really going to be scared, I'm just going to hear the word ghosts. I'm going to see people dressed as zombie. Like, I'm going to see really great makeup. I'm going to see a really good, like, effect of a guy whipping his cape and then turning into a bat. Like, stuff like that is really fun. It's always when you pull the trope for fun.
Well, then I don't know how you'd feel about the sort of Disney Asia parks situation where they think fear is the best thing possible. Out in Hong Kong Disney, they had a series of mazes. These mazes were so disturbing. They would have a plant sit in the audience, come out and be killed on stage. They were no joke. There was a Pinocchio who was chained and would try and break free of his chains.
That looks like real wood.
It was
in that rendering.
horrifying. The mazes out in the Disney Asian parks are truly next level horror, to the point where they are described as Imagineering did not care for them, but understood that they were necessary to thrive in an alternative market where that is the basis of horror. Now, they even had their own history in Disney parks located in Tokyo Disney. Now, Tokyo Disney had the Cinderella Castle Dungeon Expedition. I'm trying to remember the exact name of it, but it was essentially the Horned King from Black Cauldron was going to drag your soul to hell, have fun. And it was terrifying. And like, there had to be a little kid in the audience who beat the Horned King back with the power of hope. It was nuts. And this ran for a number of years. The, Disney parks are so clearly tied to the cultural perspective that they're located in. And the fact that the Asian parks are a little bit more willing to play into the idea of supernatural fear, although certainly not in a Saw way, is really interesting. And I really wish I could have gotten to be a part of any of these closed mazes or the long gone castle tour. TK, how do you feel about some of the imagery of these animatronics you're seeing and these attraction posters? Those attraction posters are literally hanging in the entrance. It is described as Space Mountain had a less than 10-minute wait, and the attraction time for the mazes was an hour long.
I'm enticed. I'll put it that way.
They are super special. And to me, they're really meant to, I think, channel the energy of Halloween Horror Nights. Now, Kevo, as somebody who's done Not So Scary, Halloween Horror Nights, I don't know that you've been to Halloween Horror Nights, but you were outside of them while I went in, and that was pretty cool. How do you feel about this idea that Disney's trying to capture the energy of Halloween Horror Nights with these foreign park offerings?
Well, you got to go with what the market is. And I think that Disney likes to be able to serve all sorts of audiences, and that includes sometimes the extremely horrific. And the idea that they want to give it to you in sort of a Disney-fied way, like you immediately said up front, it was a plant in the audience. You almost want to say, obviously, because it's Disney, they would never actually want to terrify an actual park guest like that. And, so I'm glad to hear that they are open to giving those sorts of entertainment experiences a chance, because they get a lot of guff for theoretically not. and I think that they do more than they are given credit for.
I just want to flash 2 comments briefly. Tasty Cake, it sounds like the Vietnamese non-Disney version of Cinderella is absolutely some Hannibal Lecter shit. And from there, I just want to say, yeah, Bruno, the fact that any park would bring back the Horned King is a real testament to the fact that Disney parks will find any way to use an IP. They have it. There's already concept art for the let's go with look. And so they're going to do it. Now, from the Disney park experience to, I believe my next slide is Halloween Horror Nights. If you've ever had the opportunity to be part of Halloween Horror Nights, then you get it. If you've never, I really recommend it if you like to be afraid, whether it's things like the now defunct but very lovely Bill and Ted show, or it's the icon exhibits in the middle of the park, it is the unique houses, or it is the fact that you can get on some rides with really short lines. Universal's Halloween Horror Nights is a really incredible experience. I love being afraid. I love doing these haunted houses. It's something that I do wish Disney could find a way to offer. Maybe it's something like the now defunct Pleasure Island downtown Disney complex. You could throw up a couple of adult Disney, spooky houses, but they're always building, parking structures because that place is so busy. It's not like they've got a huge amount of real estate. But Universal has a little bit more real estate, and they have a number of lovely, enormous queues. And that's something that I think that the Halloween Horror Nights experience benefits from, the space to be afraid. Now, I've done Halloween Horror Nights. I've done Fright Fest at Six Flags. I've done a number of independent sort of fear things. One thing that the Halloween Horror Nights experience can offer that absolutely no other park can even come close to measuring against is the level of fear. The number of performers, the dedication, there is an artistry to being part of the Halloween Horror Nights experience. And it actually all goes back. Kevo, if you'd go to the first column you made for me there, these incredible graphics by Kevo are so amazing. This first one says the closed history of Terror on Church Street, Orlando. Terror on Church Street was a sort of local exhibit that played upon the fact that the tourism center of Orlando had room for a lot more exhibits than were currently open. And this played against the idea of the Halloween Horror Night sort of trope before it even existed. Many of the people who worked for Terror on Church Street would go on to be part of the Halloween Horror Nights experience. And Halloween Horror Nights itself, you can see, is broken down into a number of different years. The early years as, this is from a team called Expedition Theme Park. Expedition Theme Park is a phenomenal group. It's really one guy, but at this point, there's a number of people involved. They do an incredible series of videos when they tackle the topic. Sometimes it seems like it'll be a little bit between videos. So if you're looking to Patreon, definitely shoot them a little Patreon magic so that maybe those videos come out a little bit faster, right? But he's broken down these years into these perfect brackets: the early years, the icon years, the IP years. Those early years are just sort of like, be scared at a theme park. It's fine. But when you get to the icon years, they designed these brilliant terror icons, things like clowns, evil dolls, a sick filmmaker that I think TK would be obsessed with. These years were all very cool. Unfortunately, I am not as big a fan of the IP years. I am not looking for Walking Dead to come in and replace Halloween Horror Nights. No, thank you. But I definitely do appreciate that they needed to do what it took to stay relevant, to stay competitive. You can actually see in the next column over that I expanded this into a few more of the theme park offerings around the world. Things like Hollow Scream at Busch Gardens, as well as in the next list, there is the SeaWorld experience. I genuinely love theme parks transforming into nightmare terror zones. It's very cool. One of the things that's especially unique about Halloween Horror Nights at Universal is the different parks don't get the same icons. So there might be an extreme event in Orlando, but it's not happening in Hollywood. So the number of experiences at Halloween Horror Nights is so immense. I do not have a chance to have gotten to be part of all of them, even since I've become part of the fandom. TK, did you realize that this was like an ongoing serialized canon? Oh, gosh.
I keep muting because of the dogs. No, not at all. I've been, aware of Halloween Horror Nights as like a thing at Universal. But really, I did not know anything about the serialization or the canonicity of it.
That was a
But
shock for us too. Yeah.
I'm impressed.
It is unbelievable. I definitely recommend being a part of these videos. Just watching, commenting, liking. Help make this whole sort of theme park preservation project a little bit easier for these guys. When they see these likes, when they see these views, just like us, it tells us that you're looking for these things. It's actually very expensive to do theme park preservation. When you're not out there trying to film this stuff, you got to find people like me who have old VHSs that are willing to convert them for you. You know, it's definitely a process. But the work that Expedition Theme Park has done to make sure that Halloween Horror Nights has stayed so preserved, when he didn't come into the game until I think he came in at year like 27. It's definitely a thing where this is a body of work that I'm very impressed with, which is why there's 25 videos from one source on this list. Really, truly, Expedition Theme Park. I've been Patreoning this guy for about 4 years now. Definitely worthwhile endeavor. And if you want to know a little bit more about experiential horror, this is a great way. And I would love to check out my next slide, because experiential horror does not stop with the two biggest theme parks in the country, but instead it extends all around the nation, whether it's things like other theme parks, like I'm 37, 3 years from now for my 40th birthday. All I want to do is go to Holiday World, take a picture with Holodog, and go on the Raven. That's all I want. My favorite thing in the world is a wooden roller coaster. Holiday World is my dream. Can't wait to go. But from other theme parks to, wow, Kevo, could you go back for why? I get the hint.
But no, I'm just moving along to the next.
Well,
we're going to go.
Kings Island really deserves a little bit of a moment. The Kings Island Monster Rock show, they do Pat Benatar. They do We Are a Monster Band. It's really amazing. The music at the Kings Island live show, all live sung, all live performed. It is very impressive. Cannot give it enough of a huge shout out. There's a video of those incredible performers putting on that show. Anybody who is willing to get up on a stage and do 30 minutes of vocals deserves your credit. But anybody who's willing to do it dressed as Frankenstein because they just fucking love singing so much deserves it maybe a little bit doubly so, right? And so I just really wanted to hit how much I am impressed with the Kings Island live performances. It seems like maybe Kings Island's experience isn't quite as scary, but definitely a lot of entertainment for the money. From there, I do want to point out that as a New York boy, right? Jekyll and Hyde. I dated a guy for about 5 years, and his dad was kind of like, I'm a big roller. And so when his dad came to town, he was like, yeah, we're going to take a horse-drawn carriage ride through Central Park, and then I'm going to take you to Jekyll and Hyde's. And it was one of those things where I was like, I understand that you left the tri-state area 20 years ago, but Jekyll and Hyde's is not the height of the food experience in New York. You want to take me to a Peter Luger's? We can talk. You want to talk? But
well, he looked like a character out of this experience.
Right, you met him.
Identity.
Yes, that is the correct ex-boyfriend's dad.
When last we met, he looked like the Penguin. So
once upon a time he was. Yeah. Anyway, so Jekyll and Hyde's, if you never went to it, you just don't understand. What if you went to a rainforest cafe, but it was themed to every cheesy, shitty monster you have ever heard of? And what if every drink had a funny, spooky name and cost $17? And what if the wings were gross? That was Jekyll and Hyde's. I want to point out that I was so sure that Jekyll and Hyde's was closed when I started the research for this video that I was like, oh, they're closed. I can't even go. Well, their website's still up. So is their Facebook. So is their Instagram, Twitter. But when you call, you get a disconnected signal. And then I Google that they owed so much back rent that they just ran in the night, and all of their services are paid to run for X number of years by automatic service charges. And that there has been nobody there since July of 2022. So sadly, Jekyll and Hyde's a real one-of-a-kind experience where every 15 minutes, something like Frankenstein monster wakes up, even though Frankenstein's monster just served you drinks. Dr. Jekyll transforms into Mr. Hyde, even though Mr. Hyde just came and brought you wings.
Oh, Bruno has discovered the secret of our show. He says, Nico's expressions, I'm a fan now. That's the show.
That's the whole thing.
Welcome
right
to
there.
it.
Anyway, Jekyll and Hyde's, I will never forget somebody being like, can you believe we're being here right now? Can you believe you're eating here? How lucky we are to be in New York right now. And then just 8 years later, that moment would be recreated in the now world famous musical Hamilton. Greatest city in the world. I do want to say, though, that more than any theme park exhibit, if you really want to know what makes me truly afraid, is one-of-a-kind theatrical experiences based out in the woods. I grew up going to things like the Belmar Haunted the Belmar Haunted Corn Maze and stuff. And like, Jersey loves its haunted rides and its haunted hay rides. We really are the Garden State. There's tons of farms and they're kind of all abandoned. Nobody can afford to keep them up anymore. So we turn them into haunted mazes and they're great. But this is a list of some of the ones that I really, really would love to go if I had unlimited funds and could go around the country like some of the guys on this list. There are a couple of incredible creators here. Just by virtue of what they've produced, I cannot speak to the quality of their backstory, who they are, etc. But if you want to know a little bit more about some of the scariest places in the United States in terms of like experiential horror, I really would love to know more about 13th Gate, Wisconsin Fairgrounds, Headless Horseman Haunted Attractions in New York, and Haunted Overload in New Hampshire. This represents 4 of what are considered the top 10 haunted experiences around the country. And these are some pretty good videos to give you an idea. Now, again, I can't testify to the content of the rest of those channels, but I can say that those videos give you an incredible idea of those experiences. My number one fear experience in the nation is by far Haunted Overload in New Hampshire. I cannot think of a place I want to spend my Halloween more. I just imagine that October 31st there is just the best thing in the entire world. I would love to be frightened there. And I just want to thank you guys for going on like a 35-minute experience of being terrified around the country with me. And, you know, I just want to thank my unbelievably adoring team in the comments, my incredible team on air, because we are a team. I can make all the faces I want, but if no one's around to point out how silly they are, they're just not funny. And so it's always about a team effort. And I would love to know what you guys think about the exploration of experiential horror that I have subjected you guys to for the last 40 minutes.
I didn't realize Jekyll and Hyde was going to be on there.
Oh, tell me you've been.
I mean, that's basically an NYU dormitory cafeteria. So, yes, I have been many times.
Oh, my God.
You have absolutely been subjected to acting students forcing their improv in your face while you're trying to eat.
Did you ever
I subjected them to me drunk, screaming, interacting back. That was Jekyll and Hyde was where we would go when we had done all of the other things that we could do. When we knew
TK, serious, actual immediate emergency.
What?
Did you ever do the cannibal dining room corpse experience?
I don't believe so, no.
Okay. I can't find anyone who did it but one guy on YouTube. And I'm like, I'm desperate to know.
Yeah. So that, my big reaction was I didn't really consider that. That is technically, yes, experiential horror. But I mean, I love this list. I love that this is where your brain went. And I love the fact that this is all documented, but again, this is also like a call to everybody to go do experiential horror. I think it is really cool to check it out. I think experiencing the archive of the stuff you probably won't be able to get to again because it's a closed down experience or one that just will be done differently in the future. I love that there are people who documented that and I love that we can see it. But I think this is also really kind of an encouragement to everybody to go have the experience, go sit in the alien encounter amphitheater and feel those jets blowing weird hot air on your back.
Well, and what you're saying was even the original intention of the channel we love so much, Defunctland, and where it
Yeah.
came from. It was to just do defunct attractions
Yeah.
and talk about ones that you can't literally go to anymore. And that's what's so fascinating about so many of these, is that many of them will eventually go away.
There's one that I could not put on this list because I could not find anything about it. Kevy, do you remember your first ever New York Comic Con? It was such... Oh, yeah.
You couldn't find anything. Wow. Oh, we'll have to do a video about it sometime, even a short one. Go ahead.
It was the Thursday
Wow.
of my first time bringing my beautiful husband to New York Comic Con, which is
2010.
My Christmas. And it's this weekend. We're not there this weekend for a number of reasons, but it is my Christmas. And we are there. And the first thing we see on a landing platform that never has attractions on it is, do you want to be put in a Weyland-Yutani cryostasis pod?
Oh, God.
I climb in immediately. And at first they don't, like, they tell you there's an emergency escape. Like, you can press a button, if you're getting scared. But like,
it was basically a sensory deprivation tank.
Pitch black. Yeah. And all of a sudden you start hearing like, and like, they literally start to make you think that the alien is in the sensory deprivation tank with you. And once you're clearly being terrified, they put a video in front of you advertising the quadrilogy Blu-rays.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
Right in front of your face.
Like this far from your face. I came out pretty fucked up. And they gave you a t-shirt. They gave you a couple of other things just for doing it. But like Thursday, the wait was 1 minute. Friday, the wait was like 4.5 hours. And it was the best experience.
You did it twice, I think, didn't you? I didn't do it once. I was like, nope, I had not given Alien the full chance yet. It was a good 10 years almost before we did our podcast on all of the Alien and Predator franchise, and I am still a somewhat claustrophobic person who would not enjoy that, even a Doctor Who one. Nope, wouldn't be able to do it. So I'm glad I didn't, but I am so glad I encouraged you to do it as many times as you wanted. Oh, you were so happy, and I still remember it.
Yeah, it was the best. I think I got a large and an extra large t-shirt. I think I did it twice, so I got 2 different t-shirts. So I got multiple face hugger masks. It was a thing.
Yeah.
But we have one more list of horror things, and this one is, I think, well, less frightening, no less Halloween, because the definition of Halloween isn't fear. The definition of Halloween is the expression of spooktacular spoopiness. And, Kevo, your list reminded me the things that made me fall in love with being spooked, not scary. And that's one of the reasons I love your list so much.
Oh, thank you. I came to this idea in the first place because I have my many lists of Halloween episodes and marathons. I go to the Wikipedia list of Halloween specials and episodes, and I see what episodes of my favorite shows have them. And that is, even the whole purpose of this broadcast in the first place is to encourage you to go out and seek your own Halloween things. There are hopefully shows that you love on this list that you didn't know had Halloween episodes, or maybe you'll rethink some of your own. In organizing how I wanted to present my Halloween programming, I decided to go in sequence, thinking of it as starting in the wee hours of the morning. And so I went with a lot of my sort of more fun and cute Halloween programming. So for funsies up first, I have an episode of Phineas and Ferb, an episode of Gargoyles, an episode of Power Rangers, the Toy Story special, Toy Story of Terror, and the Muppet special, Muppets Haunted Mansion. The Phineas and Ferb episode is also a little bit stealthing in, trying to get anyone to watch Phineas and Ferb who hasn't seen it before. I rewatched the episode I selected for this, getting prepared for this episode, and yeah, there's a lot of really cute things that are great introductions to these characters and the concept for the show.
If you like me, you'll like Phineas.
Yeah, Yeah, if you like me, you like Ferb, or maybe you like the giant baby head.
If
You
you
know,
like TK, you'll definitely like Perry the Platypus.
it's a great episode. It's got the music
He
video
just made
for
the
the Perry the
noise.
Platypus theme. He did. He made the Perry noise right there. The Gargoyles episode that I picked is specifically also a Halloween themed one. It's got Elisa in her Beauty and the Beast costume. It starts a trend that continues into the comics of her being Disney princesses for Halloween. Stop me if you want to break in. I'm just going to keep rambling.
Well,
If there's
I
anything you
only
want to note
want
on,
to
please.
I just want to say that one of the things I think is really great is your list itself is representational of the idea that you're trying to explore here. Phineas and Ferb can be scary and a little bit like action centric, but it's not necessarily horror by definition. Gargoyles is horror by concept, but not horror by execution of individual episodes. Power Rangers has built in horror monsters, but the horror monsters isn't the focus, but rather the superheroes that overcome it is. With Toy Story, yeah, Sid is built into the idea, and maybe you could even be afraid of the idea of your toys coming to life. But Toy Story itself is a celebration of imagination. The Muppets are a complicated story, whether it's their start as Muppets Sex and Violence, or it's the idea that Menomina is from a Swedish porn film. But at the end of the day, the Muppets themselves do border on adult for all of the ways that they are explorations of childhood magic, but they are not in and of themselves horrific. The idea that your list explores things that exist both within and outside of the horror genre is what makes your list so exciting to me. It touches back on TK's idea of things like disturbing behavior and My Boyfriend's Back, not necessarily being stories about the supernatural or horror, but taking elements from multiple genres to create a fusion that is, definitive for a generation that is going to come to appreciate multiple genres later on.
I didn't know TK wanted to go first. I only want to correct the villain of Toy Story of Terror isn't Sid.
Oh,
It is
I said that.
instead.
Yeah.
No, I know, and I just wanted to say the villain is a character played by, and when I saw who the character was, I was like, that character is probably voiced by Steven Tobolsky, isn't it? And it was, and I
Wait,
thought that was entertaining.
like
Yeah,
One Day
from
at a
Glee
Time.
and One Day at a Time and Groundhog Day. Yeah, this also features a cameo appearance by Carl Weathers as an Action Carl action figure, which is amazing. There are so many low key Toy Story programs that really went under the radar that a lot of people didn't notice. This is an amazing one. There's a Christmas one that we've never watched, but we did watch this one, and I loved it.
Okay, but the most important thing about the entirety of the Toy Story franchise, the single most important contribution to all of pop culture, BT did the score to
Partysaurus Rex. Yes, he did. Yes, in fact, he did.
Also, it is absolutely insane how I am attracted to every version of Carl Weathers.
That is insane. But to segue into attractive, I specifically needed to make sure to include a photo of Rocky from this episode of Power Rangers Zeo, because this was a peak era for Rocky, and unfortunately he wasn't on the cover of the VHS for this episode. We all love Power Rangers here. We did a whole episode about Power Rangers Once and Always, which was the special for the 30th anniversary back in April. And, so I wanted to include something to represent that love in this list. And I was going to go with Mighty Morphin because Mighty Morphin is the classic. But, gosh, this special is just so campy and fun. And it really gives itself over to being so silly and completely surrendering to parodying all of these tropes. The majority of it is in black and white. The majority of it is absolutely no morphing. The majority of it is all of the characters except for Adam playing up these tropes. Billy being a mad scientist, Kat being a cat that turns into a witch. So delightful and fun. And Zeo was a really interesting era for Power Rangers. So I love the nod that it got in the 2017 Power Rangers movie because it really deserved it. And again, Rocky being a werewolf and looking so fine. And really loved it.
to your point about there's like limited morphing in this special, that actually kind of puts it on par with one of the Christmas specials. I think it's I'm Dreaming of a White Ranger, has next to no morphing in it.
Yeah. I imagine they probably had to do a Zord battle because I don't think you can get away with doing a Power Rangers episode without a Zord battle at this point. But, 2 minutes, it's done.
I really think part of what you're hitting on with what makes these things work is it's the idea that the horror is baked into the universe. They're not injecting, like, I don't know if you have the Boy Meets World episode on here, but if you do,
I have one.
It's the I Know What You Did Last Summer Scream one. I was about to say, that one's kind of silly. It feels like infusing artificial horror into that universe, and if it works for you, that's great. But what I love about literally every one of the things you have on this list is they utilize the existing elements of the notions of horror built into the universe to further the story. I just really think you, with Muppets Haunted Mansion, this might have been the thing that made me say, wow, Darren Criss is willing to throw himself into the fun. So those of you who don't know, my all-time favorite Disney Parks character ever is the narrator in Carousel of Progress. But my number 2 by a mile is the groundskeeper in the Haunted Mansion. I could buy every piece of merchandise they've ever made about this character, and I have kind of close to it.
No. Go ahead, finish first. I'm sorry.
I bought the blueprints to the scene that the character is in because he's only in one scene of the entire Haunted Mansion. Darren Criss playing this character really, like, I don't know. I never thought of Darren Criss before this, but like he literally tried to embody a shaking animatronic. This Muppet special is special.
Oh no, are we live on air coming up with the concept of doing a Carousel of Progress movie where Darren Criss is the narrator? Because I think he would kill it. Yeah.
All I want to do is, oh my God, he has Rover with him.
And what?
He has Rover with him.
Yeah. Do it with the Muppets. Oh my God, a Muppets Carousel of Progress special where he is the narrator who is the...
It's actually just around the turn of the century here, and we've just gotten some electricity.
That's just... That and Will Arnett and Taraji are just a few of the cameos that there are in this special.
Hatbox Ghost.
One of the last appearances of
Leslie Jordan?
Hudson from Gargoyles. Spunk. I hate Spunk.
Yeah, Ed Asner.
Ed Asner, one of his last roles. Amazing
the first time
job.
I ever saw the Mary Tyler Moore series finale, I sobbed so uncontrollably through the night that my parents had to not let me go to school the next day because I hadn't slept, because I was so obsessed with Mary Tyler Moore that the idea that the show ended broke me.
How old were you?
I was 10.
I knew it.
Through the night. Through the night.
Indeed.
My dad rubbing my back. Just gotta breathe, dude. The show ended 20 years ago. Oh, gosh. So, Kevy, you have an unbelievable group of children's programming here. TK, what do you feel about this idea of the contrast of childhood horror?
First off, in some ways, I want to set Muppets Haunted Mansion like entirely in a category of its own. Unfortunately, we didn't, in our Haunted Mansion episode, get as much time to talk about Muppets Haunted Mansion because it is so much its own experience. And I think in a lot of ways was the most successful adaptation and was the one that kind of did the thing that Haunted Mansion most needed to do.
As is always the case.
As is always the case, exactly. So, that's one where I'm just like...
She bring it to you every Monster Ball.
They bring it to you every Muppet.
That was a really fun watch for me when we were doing our research for our Haunted Mansion episode. That sort of took a lot of the sting out of some of the disappointment of the recent Haunted Mansion movie. And so
And I think our biggest complaint for the Electric Mayhem show was not enough Muppets. There should have been more Muppets in it. Is our only complaint.
Although, like, quite literally, the heartthrob I never expected to take my breath away, Taj Mowry. You know,
Yeah.
the Electric Mayhem, I think, might have only gotten a show because of their inclusion in something like this, where they really were able to be playful. But I do agree with you. This was not, nor was that, really the best use of human and Muppet at the same time.
But as for the other shows, I love a theme episode. These are not quite bottle episodes, but they are very much, most of this stuff won't carry into the rest of the show.
Right.
Just have fun today. Have fun with this episode. Enjoy whatever we are doing. In this case, obviously it's not going to be high stakes horror. This is not meant to terrify. This is for children, but it is meant to be of the season and of the time. And some of the, Gargoyles and Power Rangers are two that I have experience with. Phineas and Ferb, Toy Story, not so much. But I think this is a really good way to experience some of what Halloween has to offer, because like Christmas, a lot of it is about the magic of it. A lot of it is about how you get to what we consider the elements of Halloween, whether that's ghouls and ghosts, whether that is a jack-o'-lantern on the steps. Like, how do we bring that into the world here? In some cases it's going to be horror movies, in other cases it's going to be haunted houses, and in some cases it's just going to be a fun episode of a show.
And some things are somewhere in between.
Yeah.
When we get to the end of my list, we're going to have a few more block entries like this, several entries, but I have a few more singular entries for my next few for my marathon. Up first, I have just the full-on series of Julie and the Phantoms, which was an adorable Netflix series that dropped somewhere in the middle of the Pando and starred, of all people, Jeremy Shada, the voice of Finn from Adventure Time, as one of three young men who were part of a rock band in the 1990s who had some rancid street meat and died, and now have come back as ghosts to help this young woman, Julie, who recently lost her mother and is trying to find the music in her heart again. It is from Kenny Ortega, and it is something that he holds in such high regard still, that when there was a celebration of his career a year ago or so, some of the stars that came out were from High School Musical, Descendants, and Julie and the Phantoms. It is 9 episodes, about half an hour each, and the whole series is about 4.5 hours. So it's not, anything too terrible. It's like 3 movies, basically.
The
3
songs,
90-minute movies.
The songs are decom or better. That's kind of a floor. But Kevo, can you scroll down a little bit more to the there's some, decent look at.
I mean, Charlie Gillespie is an enormous crush of mine because of this series.
There's also a ton of gay in this.
Oh, specifically, there is overt gay with Boo Boo Stewart. Yep. And one of the male leads, the drummer of the band, who have an explicit romance. It is the only really somewhat explicit romance of the unfortunately only 9-episode series. So that was really awesome, and it's really awesome. Stuff like that is so important to Kenny Ortega, especially when he has the opportunity to have such creative control on something like Netflix over Disney Channel.
Yet this is certainly not the best spooky Boo Boo Stewart decom level musical appearance.
You feel like Descendants is spookier?
I feel like he shines more in Descendants.
I get that. And, Descendants was something I bandied about putting on this list. But it is an hour longer. The Descendants trilogy is an hour longer than this whole 9-episode series is.
Damn.
Yeah, and that doesn't even include all the Descendants extras, like
Like that
the
shitty little animated series or the follow-up animated series or
that thing where Uma and Mal have have that battle off, or the wedding special. Yeah, not even including all of that. 5.5 hours. So it was a little bit too long. So that's part of why Julie and the Phantoms won.
Okay.
Plus the gay, and plus once again, Charlie Gillespie's torso.
Yeah, those pecs literally look like they got some weight. Good for him.
Respect.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's a chest.
really, truly. And unless Tiki, you have any commentary on?
No, I
Julie
mean,
and the
I just thank
Phantoms?
you for introducing me to this. I literally did not know this existed.
It's the adaptation of a Brazilian series.
That doesn't surprise me given how Netflix does. But again, like I think you really, I love that you interpreted the assignment in your own way. And like, this clearly is not meant to be like a spooky ghost show, but not all Halloween ghosts have to be spooky ghosts. And
Exactly.
so, you know, if we're talking about doing a great Halloween marathon, pulling in Rockstar Ghosts is perfect for the assignment. I think it's so fun. And it's so you. I know you guys are just finishing up a Glee rewatch. I know how much you love stuff like The Descendants and High School Musical, the musical, the series. And so you have managed to make it yours and also be completely on theme. And I'm just very impressed. And also you've introduced me to something totally new and a great pair of tits. How am I going to complain?
Really, truly.
So yeah, I just want to say, Bruno, I don't know if you're aware, but like the US's obsession with South American culture is such a powerful thing, whether it's things like adapting adapting American shows from South American programming or being super eager to sell American programming to South America. The other thing is the Disney company has such a powerful relationship with South America as an entity. We actually had specific Brazilian translators that were on site throughout the summers to help handle the incredible influx of South American tourists. And it was known as, it was known as Brazilian tour guest season. And it was a whole thing. So we would be taught certain phrases like "va a casara," which is move on the sidewalk, and things that I'm sure are awfully, horribly wrong. But one of the things that I think is so important to remember about Julie and the Phantoms and what you're about to bring up next, Kevo, is that they really do sort of encapsulate an idea of, I actually want to say, like freedom from American shackles. Like the idea of making programming that's a little bit braver in an audience that looks for everything to have a CSI in the name.
Of all the segues that I thought would lead us into this one that I had for us as off ramps, I didn't think this would be the one leading us into it. But here we are. And my next entry following Julie and the Phantoms is the Zombies series, the DComs. There are a lot of reasons that I chose this over Descendants. Again, an hour shorter.
The son of fat girls rule.
What?
The son of fat girls rule. When Cameron Manheim won her Emmy, she said, "Fat
Cameron
girls
Manheim,
rule."
yes. Milo Manheim, yes.
That
Cameron
guy is
Manheim's
Cameron
son
Manheim's son. He's
the lead.
A great dancer, great singer, really positive energy actor. Did great on Celebrity Family Feud with his mom. Can't say enough positive things about this guy. He seems like a lot of fun.
And really, it's like you say, positive energy that is
Positive
really why I
energy.
ended up picking this over Descendants. Descendants is really cool, especially considering what it does with the Disney IPs. But like, everyone's a lot more snarky and bitter and angry, and like that's fun, and it's even fun for Halloween. But like, these are so uplifting and cheerful, and it's about positivity, and it really made me believe in cheerleading as a sport.
And
For
Mama
the first
Rue
time
is
in
in
my
the
life.
third one.
And Mama Rue is the voice of a spaceship in the third one. When we first saw the music video in our hotel room in our Disney resort from the second movie, where it was a bunch of werewolves, and we were like, wait, the first movie is zombies and the second movie is werewolves. And I look it up and I see, hold on, and the third stupid movie is going to be about aliens of all things. what are these stupid movies? They're dumb. I'm going to watch them when the third movie comes out, and I'm going to fall in love with them, and I know I am. And I said all of this at the time.
He
Did
really
I
did.
not?
He
I
really did.
really did, and it is what happened.
He was like,
It's
"Hey, I
so
know I'm calling them stupid, but watch what you say about them because I will ultimately love them."
I know they're dumb, but they're gonna be so cute, aren't they? And they were queer in the end. This character, Aspen, one of the aliens, you can make the joke, of course, the aliens have blue hair and pronouns, but they really did, and this actor really is gender queer, gender fluid, not sure. Look it up yourself because they are an amazing performer, and these movies are great, and this is a queer relationship that was given room in a decom. And yeah, that's really cool. The music from this is banger. The
And
hottie
Service
in this
Top,
one, the hottie in this one is Bucky for
oh,
sure,
Bucky
or
and
Wyatt.
but Service Top from High School the Musical the series is in
Yeah,
what's his name?
EJ Matt Cornett
Matt
from
Cornett.
High School
Thank you.
Musical, the musical, the series.
Genuinely, he gives a really phenomenal performance as somebody who clearly is like a B plus in a number of like, yeah, he's the second best singer. He is the second best dancer, the second best actor, but he clearly puts in the effort that makes you believe he is the best at all of them on High School Musical, the series. And I just wanted to give him a spotlight because he does a really flat job in Zombies 3. They don't give him anything to work with. So if you check out Zombies because of these, and you then decide to go check out High School Musical, the series, I got it right once. Then you will see that he is actually a great performer and up there with Bucky and Zed.
Well, he is exceptional Zed, so
I'm actually the exceptional Zed in real life. I really relate to the lead in Zombies. I think it's a really great franchise. Cannot say enough positive things. I thought I would hate these movies. I thought Kevo was making me watch them to suffer. And these were truly charming. If you can get past the first 15 minutes or so of the first one, you can get through all three with a really good time.
and I feel like something I came to realize that what drew to me to this series over time was thinking about how I would have responded to this as a kid, and so many of the allegories of this relationship are given so many different comparisons, whether it's to racial struggles or queer struggles, but when I was a young queer kid and we didn't have that sort of stuff on TV, it's something I would have related to as a queer kid. This idea of society being against your relationship for the dumbest of reasons that aren't your fault. And it was something that I think a lot of young queer kids related to when it came to the romance between Goliath and Elisa on Gargoyles and so many different things. And that's definitely something that I responded to in this franchise as well. And it's just cute. It's fun.
And but when Bucky, male cheerlead boy, dances in that little uniform, I'm super glad it's legal.
So handsome.
So handsome. And charming, fun, positive energy. That's the big thing I want to say about so much of Kevo's list. Even when things get spoopy, it's a really positive energy. It's like an exciting to kind of be a little bit scared, but mostly just have a good spooky time. It's scary the way the Rocky Horror Picture Show is scary.
Bucky actually kind of reminds me of TK if TK had been a type A popular cheerleader in high school.
Yeah, he's got a lot of that like controlling, positive, I want to make everybody have a good time, so have a good time kind of vibe that TK would have if he hadn't been, well developed.
I wouldn't wear that hat though.
You'd look so good in it.
Oh, you would.
You would look good in any hat. My boyfriend's a fucking knockout. Anyway. All right. Kevo, what do you got next?
What I have next is something that is seasonal for both Halloween and both just the year that we are in, because it is the 60th anniversary of Doctor Who. And so I wanted to devote at least part of my block to Doctor Who. None of these are my favorite. What is the theme here? It is Halloween monsters. I went with werewolf, vampire, mummy, and witch to give us across the 10th, 11th, 12th, and 13th Doctors. And then looking at this slide today, I turned to Nico and I said, these episodes are every 4th year, 2006, 2010, 2014, and 2018. And they are every 5th series. Series 2, Series 5, Series 8, Series 11.
And then
that's just how things timed out. And
then each episode is a multiple of 2. So it's 4, 3, 2, 1, shift into turbo.
Yeah, and then it's April and May and October and November. So it was just ultimately very kismet that I chose, but I mostly encourage you to find the Doctor Who episodes that really spook you out, because it could be any of them, really.
Yeah. Doctor Who, it was one of those really amazing shows that can be genuine. You have moments watching Doctor Who where you're like, this is not appropriate for children. This is upsetting and terrifying. And then you like realize that it is actually perfect for children because it's a really safe way to be scared.
Yeah, and that really was always the intention of the series, was to be something that is scary but is still accessible to kids.
Yeah.
From the very beginning, they had different standards for what you were allowed to do to children back in the 1960s. But I think we're swinging back around to terrifying our children again.
And, like you picked Vampires of Venice is not a scary episode of Doctor Who. It does feature vampires, which is a very Halloween on theme thing. But like, even any of the Angel episodes from Blink, Time of the Angels, those are jump scare episodes. Those are specifically, the lights go out, and when the lights come back on, the murderer is so much closer to you. Can you outrun the murderer if you always have to look at them? So like you could have picked those and had, a frightening series of episodes. Even the one where he destroys the family, and he like traps one of them in a black hole and makes one of them a scarecrow.
Yeah, Family
forever.
of Blood.
Thank you. That's like a pretty scary episode overall, and then it's pretty horrifying what he does to all of them. So like there are ways you could have taken this list and been like, here are the darkest, most scary episodes of Doctor Who, but you picked ones again that are just on theme with the stuff that we might decorate our house with for Halloween.
Yeah.
And I think that's really kind of where a lot of the fun comes in. It's not always from this was the scariest thing. It's not always about the biggest fright, but the vampire girls are absolutely iconic. That's like the perfect example. Not the least bit scary. It's kind of a stupid episode. It's a very horny episode, but we got vampires. So we're doing Halloween.
I remember being, I'm so sorry, but I remember the vampire episode of X-Files with I think it's Solo Mulder, Scully's missing, and there's vampires, and they're all like trying to desperately go down on David Duchovny. And I remember thinking,
classic.
Yeah, okay, lady vampires probably like really are attracted to any man. And, that was something that I think ultimately, as I grew up, I was like, no, you really got to earn your vampire trope at this point. Yeah. When I'm a kid, I dumbly believed, oh yeah, they're all like, horny lust monsters, a la Quentin Tarantino's interpretation of vampires from Dusk Till Dawn. It's all sex and murder. But by the time I became an adult, thanks to things like Buffy, and yeah, I'm not here to sing the praises of the Twilight franchise, but rather the era that was created from the idea of furthering vampire culture in storytelling. Yeah, I think one of the things that's really of note is that Doctor Who benefited from a universe that it helped inspire with its sci-fi stories in the 70s and 80s, and then ultimately got to reap those benefits in the 2000s.
Tasty Cake says he loves the final line from Mulder in that episode.
I wish I remembered it.
And the thing about Doctor Who too is you could make the whole 24-hour program out of it. You could make the whole 24-hour program.
Yeah. You could just do a Doctor Who scary marathon. Really, truly, even just the revival. But
I was not going to waste too much of my time on it.
No, I think Sorry, go.
I only didn't include 9 because he didn't follow. He had nothing in that theme of classic monsters in this.
Are You My Mummy?
Maybe. Oh, Are You My Mummy?
Two-parter, though. Two-parter.
Fair.
I'm not
Fair.
giving that guy 2
I wouldn't have done the
episodes,
Doctor
2
dances. I would have
hours.
done the first one. Yeah, that's pretty scary.
Bruno's got the right idea.
Yeah, we all know what we're doing tonight.
So now we are back to a bit longer lists. I have
Let's
some
do it.
longer programming blocks here.
Oh yeah.
But I have a slide I call TGIFE. The first block of 4 is nostalgic era, and the second block of 4 is a modern era. Up first, we have episodes from Family Matters, Step by Step, Sabrina the Teenage Witch, and Boy Meets World. And then in the modern era, we have episodes from Modern Family, Fuller House, The Real O'Neills, and Fresh Off the Boat. So, classic first. Well, first of all, I want to go directly to this. This episode of Step by Step is on here specifically because it has a young Michelle Williams. I love that.
Pre her
amazing.
horror appearance on this list.
Yes. Oh, wow. You know, we had said it's going to be interesting to see how many items cross on our lists. Ultimately, nothing really did, but a lot of actors did in a lot of ways. So that's
Really?
fascinating. But yeah, a lot of these have multiple Halloween episodes, obviously, especially something like Sabrina the Teenage Witch, which is witchy, so of course it's going to. And in fact, the Sabrina episode and the Boy Meets World episodes that I selected are from the same year, as are the Family Matters and Step by Step. Family Matters and Step by Step had episodes from this year, but they sucked. And it was after they'd moved to CBS.
Interesting. 4 of your shows jump networks: Family Matters, Step by Step, Sabrina, and Full House to Fuller House. 4 of your shows jump networks.
Huh.
You know, and I think that might even be part of what we're talking about here. Not everything gets a Halloween episode, but if you're around long enough, you'll at least get one.
Yeah.
And what's funny is Sabrina the Teenage Witch is sort of like a built-in Halloween experience. And I do want to go a step further. Family Matters, Step by Step, Boy Meets World, Fuller House, Modern Family. Kevo, would you scroll down a little bit?
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much. Real O'Neills and Fresh Off the Boat. Every one of them has the built-in idea of the Halloween experience by virtue of the fact that they all include kids in school. Kids in American schools experience Halloween on a cultural level, if nothing else. School does things for Halloween. People talk about Halloween. There's candy drives, there's costume things, there's special events at school. There's so much that we do to program television, media, gaming, etc. Like per earlier, TK mentioned Marvel Contest of Champions, including the new edition of Kushala, a character who lost an inclusion vote, but is getting included anyway. Big fans of that here. But one of the things I want to say about that is from, like, I think it was September 27th on, when you opened Marvel Contest of Champions, it was spoopy. It was all Halloweensy. It was monsters. And that is really part of what we're talking about. Those sorts of games, mobile games that are aimed at younger players, and these sorts of shows, there is a built-in element of Halloween into these stories. And I think that's part of where this slide, Kevo, really makes sense in what we're talking about. It actually ties together experiential horror that I brought up and what TK was bringing up. The idea that things are programmed and designed for certain people to experience. I think a lot of what I said is really aimed at the same people watching some of the older programming on your list.
And this is also kind of the other side of the coin from what you picked with Doctor Who. Not a single one of those Doctor Who episodes is about Halloween. You picked elements that we associate with Halloween, which I love. In this list, almost all of it is the gang celebrates Halloween. The family celebrates Halloween. It's not, Urkel meets a werewolf. It is the Halloween party that they're going to. It is the school Halloween celebration. It is them celebrating the season. And that's another part of the whole formula. When we're talking about doing a marathon, it doesn't all necessarily have to be the elements of the theme. Sometimes it can quite literally be the theme as experienced by others. And I think this is a great list from the last 20, 30 years of families that we all identified with and went on the journey with, experiencing the thing that we're talking about here, Halloween.
I definitely experienced, just like Steve Urkel, wanting to touch Eddie's bare shoulder.
Yep.
Well, the Family Matters one here is there is a blackout and they are telling scary stories, which is why Carl and Harriet are vampires here. And the Boy Meets World one that I selected, you had mentioned earlier, did I do the horror one that a lot of people remember from Boy Meets World? That was a I Know What You Did Last Summer send up, which actually aired in February. Was not a Halloween episode. I instead went with the lesser remembered Halloween episode from that season because it aired on Halloween, which is always super cool to me. And it featured a cameo from Candace Cameron, who by then had been off of Full House for a few years, playing a satanic witch who wants to sacrifice the newly introduced character of Sean's brother, because the balcony on his apartment can summon a portal to hell. And it was just the sort of absolutely ludicrous hijinks that you would often see on TGIF that I just love. But the thing about a lot of these shows is when they go on for so long and they have so many opportunities to do so many holiday episodes, you have your choice of which one is your favorite or which one you feel is the best. The episode of Modern Family that I picked wasn't necessarily what I felt was the very best episode of Modern Family. It's the one where Gloria is pregnant and Jay gets hit on by a drag queen, and Lily thinks that drag queen is her mom because Mitchell told her that her mom was a princess because he was tired and he didn't really feel like answering the question of where her mom is at that moment. So he just said she's a princess because he was reading her a princess book. And so now he's stuck. And it's just classic Modern Family hijinks in so many ways. But it is, like you said, they're celebrating Halloween. So it is focused through the lens of Halloween and what everyone is doing and what everyone is wearing and where everyone is going, because it is an experience that we all go through. I also want to give a shout out specifically to this episode of Fuller House, where Kimmy Gibbler gets to dress up like Lucille Ball and act like Lucy to her husband's Ricky. Everything about Fuller House is just so bizarre, but so delightfully fun. And this episode is another one like the Phineas and Ferb episode, where if I'm going to stealth in trying to get you to give this show a chance, this one is pretty good. It's got Jimmy Gibbler, too. And so it's got a lot of fun stuff.
And speaking of really bizarre things, Fuller House even makes Candace Cameron Bure likable. So if that's your...
Doesn't last, though.
I don't know.
And
that effect wears off real quick.
That's but Candace, I just realized.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I do want to say a specific thing that... Oh, and Bruno, thank you so much for hanging with us for like 2.5 hours, man. Welcome to the Action Pack. We have loved having you with us. Thanks for following us. We can't wait to interact with you further. One of the things that Fuller House definitely has going for it is the nostalgia of Full House is baked in. So we expect that sort of Halloween experience. We look for those things. If you had told me there wasn't a single Halloween episode of Full House, I probably wouldn't have believed you. And I know there is a Halloween episode of Full House. So like, it's not a confusion.
No, not really.
There isn't a single like costume party episode?
No. Not really. There is one episode where there's like a scene at a costume party, but the majority of that episode is about the adult men competing in a foot race and all of them being pathetic and old and weak and Becky laughing at them. And then the main story of the episode is DJ and Stephanie splitting their room down the middle and or Stephanie moving in with Michelle so that DJ can have her own room. One of those stories. That's the majority of
But
the only episode that has any Halloween in it of the original Full House.
I remember Marla Sokolov in a costume looking.
No, that was just the way she dressed, Nico.
But Marla Sokolov in a leather costume.
That's the way she dressed.
Literally, it is what kept me pansexual in my teens. Okay.
Keep it pushing.
I promise. We'll go look again. The only other thing I want to comment on this before I move on to my last slide is Modern Family almost didn't make it. In fact, I only picked the episode that I picked because I was just putting Modern Family on here because we love it so much. We got Tori into it this year, and she loved it, and I'm super thrilled about that. But we actually had this golden television season where we had the most amazing programs, including Modern Family, but The Real O'Neills, Fresh Off the Boat. I had an episode of Speechless on here, which was an amazing, amazing show starring Minnie Driver, who had a disabled son. And it was only during the first season of that it overlapped with those Blackish, all of these shows. And it was the most diverse 5 family sitcoms going on ABC at the same time that we were all watching at the same time. And so it was really cool. And so I wanted to rep it a little bit more, but Speechless came off streaming recently. And so I was like, you know what? I don't want anything on my list that you can't find somewhere.
Great call.
So yeah, that's why I removed it. But then my last slide is must-see-ish, which is a little bit more adult fare. We have in the classic corner, I have an episode of News Radio, an episode of Frasier. Yes, it's on there. An episode of Parks and Recreation, an episode of Superstore.
And you know what's not Irie?
No. And then for the other half, I have an episode of Community, an episode of Happy Endings, and then an episode of 2 late great family-ish sitcoms, Single Parents and Home Economics. Home Economics, which was just recently struck down after making us wait 8 months. They truncated the season.
We're owed a baby.
Out of nowhere in January, ended it, and then they waited until September to tell us it was not being renewed, starring Topher Grace, Jimmy Tatro, Sashir Zamata, a whole bunch of other amazing, hilarious people. The kids on both of these shows as well. Really hilarious cast.
I was about to say, if you're watching this video 6 years from now, just look up any of the kids. That kid, now famous.
They were so hilarious, and it is so hard to get a cast of funny kids, but they really did. But to take it all the way back to the 1990s, hey, everybody remember when Joe Rogan was actually still funny?
And hot.
No, but I do remember he was hot.
Yeah, no, he was kind of funny. He wasn't the funny
sometimes.
one, though. That's really
There was
fair.
a bit on that show that I still cannot tell you why it is funny, but 4 times in 5 seasons, someone turns to Joe after he says, or someone else says his last name, and they say back to him, "Wait, your last name's
Scarelli?"
Because it was so clear he was just playing Joe Rogan. That the joke...
And he was just a minor character who normally they don't even have last names. Really, truly.
So that he was playing essentially a joke of Joe Rogan with a different last name. I, to this day, think that is like who's on first levels of like my first understanding of meta funny was that and the episode of Boy Meets World where they're like, oh, they're trying to kill this show by putting it on at 9:30.
They're trying to kill it. They're trying to kill it. And they were. And they didn't. It still lasted twice as long as that and the length of Girl Meets World after that. So shut up, the past.
News Radio. What a perfect show. Also, if you're asking me to list my 5 favorite episodes of Frasier, this is number 5. This is perfect.
This is barely Halloween and it's barely funny. but it's still one of our favorite episodes of television. If you were ever a Frasier fan and don't remember it very well, this is a good one to put back on for yourself.
I wrote a song about Marilyn Monroe.
Such a wacky cast. We are probably going to end up talking about Frasier in some capacity at some point.
This month.
Maybe for 5 minutes. Who knows?
This is a month of horrors, and Frasier did just come back without Niles, Daphne, Martin, Eddie. So I do think this is the right month to talk about Frasier.
But BB Newirth is going to guest star.
At least
BB Newirth on this list again, so there you go.
And at least one episode with Perry Gilpin, which is, if you're going to ask me who needed to be in it, there needed to be one episode with Roz. I do want to say one thing about your inclusion of this episode of Superstore, Kevo. You had a number of Superstore episodes to pick from, and you really did pick what is literally one of the funniest episodes of television maybe ever created. Hey, Spider-Man, shoot your webs.
I'm not Spider-Man, I'm gerrymandering.
Shoot him anyway. Thwip.
Whip.
It is, to this day, one of the, if I am hungover and broken and sad, I could put on this episode of...
If you want to see...
Superstore and laugh for a good 22 minutes solid. It's amazing.
If you want to see a lighthearted take on on critiques of cultural appropriation in Halloween costuming gone absolutely horribly wrong.
Oh my god.
Superstore is great for that. Superstore is sort of, to me, it is The Office, because I never worked in an office in any capacity. But goddamn did I work so many frontline retail services. I worked in a pharmacy, I worked food service, I worked clothing retail, I worked food service again. These are my people when it comes to that sort of workplace comedy. And, it really was truly an amazing show. Highly recommended. And this is a great one to put on to see if it might be one for you. Parks and Rec is a show that has all of its Halloween episodes are emotionally heightened. If you look at them, it's really weird in one way or another. They are all emotionally heightened, or they have Louis C.K., so it is a lot of rough choices. The other one I would have gone with from season 6 is kind of more of an emotional bummer, but it's funnier because it's got drunk Ben and Leslie. But this one is a lot more of an upper. I say a line from this episode a lot when Jerry is having his fart attack. So much stuff is happening right now. When I get overwhelmed. And then Community is another one that has so many. I know a lot of people go for the zombie one, but I love the horror story one.
This is the great one because it has the Dean bursting him with the chainsaw, screaming gay marriage. That's one of the top 5 Community moments of all time.
Is this the one where Shirley comes in screaming, and it's chainsaw!
Yeah, that's that exact moment.
Okay, great.
Honestly, I feel like the weakest Community Halloween episode is the first one.
Yeah.
In so many ways.
Yeah.
And that's when there's one in the 4th season.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's my list, I guess. I always finish like that. I just realize I'm done, and I'm sort of like, shit, what did you guys think? Did I do okay?
To be done. This is a phenomenal list, Kevo. I really
thoughts on the more adult sitcoms.
Yeah, I mean, but listen, we're doing a marathon. I want to watch them all. I get that, I present day will relate a little bit more to this last block, but the one I'm most excited about is Phineas and Ferb.
And actually, I want to comment on that. Kevo, you said something about these episodes are more adult, and I actually agree. They're not just more adult by, virtue of the shows themselves being more adult. But Kevo, what's the incredibly hot guy in the Spooky Endings episode who says, "I can't wait to see your penis"?
Oh my god. Yeah, no, I can't tell you what his name is off the top of my head, but he dated Zooey Deschanel in season 2 of New Girl, he was Dr. Sam, and he was on Perfect Couples with your boyfriend,
Kyle Bornheimer.
Kyle Bornheimer
The
on
hottest
NBC.
man on
Yeah.
any sitcom in the history of mankind.
Yeah.
But, you know, one of the things that the Happy Endings episode actually does is it sort of like plays with something that I was maybe surprised you didn't pick this episode of Modern Family. There is a sort of very queer tradition of Halloween, like drag queens, faggots, like we come alive on, you know, the Halloween season. And I think in so many ways, it's because like Halloween. Oh, David Walton. Thank you so much, Kevo. Because the nature of Halloween is camp. The nature of Halloween is extreme. It's over the top. It's theatrical. And so much of our Halloween programming pushes into that area, but it's so afraid to say, you know, the gayness of it in such explicit terms. And while something like Real O'Neill's, which was on your previous slide, is legitimately just, you know, gay, with the more adult page, we're able to see a few more things that are deliciously faggoty. While I do recognize that there is a drag queen in the episode of Modern Family that you brought up, it is in the most non-sexual way. Whereas in the later season of Modern Family, which includes a drag queen reference, it's actually like they're down in the village and they're out at like a drag festival and they're just at a Halloween party where there are just drag queens running about. And that is sort of the nature of what I think sometimes gets lost in the queerness of Halloween. We're not looking to have an incredibly sanitized queer Halloween. Like, I'm going to be at my favorite place outside of anywhere that these guys are. And I'm going to be at Camp Out for Halloween this year. And I cannot wait to be at a really queer Halloween because that's sort of my scene. And I think that Modern Family, and ultimately, well, not necessarily in this episode, but particularly Happy Endings, we're able to go to such queer places, really highlight something that the Halloween experience is sort of culturally lacking at times, which is the queerness. You know, TK, you are a counterculture king in every single way. And, you know, you're not the Halloweensiest, but you stand up for, you know, spoopy rights. How do you feel about the nature of queerness represented, not just in our lists, but the nature of queerness in Halloween when all drag really is the best of Halloween year round?
Yeah, it's true. I mean, who doesn't love to dress up? Come on. You know, I thought about doing a list that was more queer horror. And I found that I just couldn't pull it together. It wasn't even it probably would have been like a more comprehensive, diverse, interesting list, but the basic theme of like 90s horror and these films that I grew up with was really easy to get to. But yeah, there's not really a lot of queerness there besides those like subtextual moments with Billy and Stu in Scream. Like there's just not a lot
Phineas
there.
and Ferb.
Your list, I think, you know, you bring your queerness to your list. A lot of those experiences are not inherently queer. What?
I just can't believe that poor Bruno is still with us. It's got to be like 6/17/74 in the morning.
You nailed that time.
Yeah.
Yes.
You are not good at time, sir.
Thank you for sticking with us, Bruno. We promise we'll shut up soon so we can all go to bed. Yeah, you have a list that I think you can really bring queerness to. And then Kevo's is kind of that fusion of the two where like some of these shows do bring queerness into the Halloween experience, but then a lot of us, we're bringing our queerness to relating to the shows themselves.
Oh, for sure. You know, I just want to end this broadcast because I think that's what we're at.
Yeah.
I want to end this with Bruno's amazing question. Do you guys usually dress up for Halloween? Oh, yes. I love to cosplay and cosplay. So I kind of dress up year round. I think there's nothing more fun than putting on a costume and still being you, but being some version of you. It's always a really exciting opportunity to express something about like what makes our fiction suits so exciting to wear in public. So yeah, I love dressing up. I can't wait. I'm going to be dressing up with my boyfriend at the campground. I don't know what we're doing yet. I think we're actually doing Batman and the Joker, but I get to be Batman, so I'm not that upset. How about you guys?
I mean, in general, like the dressing up. Love the cosplay aspect of Comic Con. Always enjoyed that, and especially stuff like cash play. This is the Tony Stark baseball jersey that you got me for Christmas, along with the Spider-Man one. It's fun.
Yeah, I think we all share a love of cash play, and that's the main mode. I love if somebody can give me a legit excuse to do a really solid costume. Like I probably will not dress up for Halloween this year because I don't think I'll be doing anything.
Right.
I am technically on call for work at that time and I'm by myself. So realistically, like I'm probably not going anywhere for Halloween. But if I know that I am going to go somewhere or for like, a con or something like that, if somebody wants to do like a group look or something like that, I love to go all out. I love to plan and execute a really fantastic look. But in general, unless there's like motivation and energy behind it, I've got, my very solid, Summers family set of hoodies that I like to wear and just live my
Nice.
Cyclops or Cable fantasy.
That's how you do.
Exactly.
All right. This is one of our longest broadcasts, but
Yeah,
man,
it's time to get to bed.
we covered 72 hours of programming, so we fucking won.
Yeah,
All right.
And we only scratched the surface.
that's
I'm
true.
really curious.
We got more of these to do.
I'm really curious to see what will happen in a year and if there will be any repeats. I think we can get away with there being none. I can probably even do an entire new TGIF lineup with all different shows. Who knows?
I really do believe in you.
Reminder, if you missed any of the things that we discussed here, check us out on Facebook. All of the slides that we had up here have been uploaded to a Facebook album on our Facebook, so check us out. At X's for Show on Facebook, and you can see them all there. You can also see all of the videos that Nico discussed during his segment on an awesome playlist we have compiled here on our channel. So check out our playlist. We have a lot of really cool things under there. A lot of our videos are organized in really cool categories. That one is called Nico's Halloween 2023 Spooky Experiences playlist. And I also have one of my own there that I put a few songs from Julie and the Phantoms and Zombies, Descendants, a few other things, some Disney villain songs, a few other things. There's an Eartha Kitt banger in there. So definitely check that out. I'm going to try and see if I can get this gentleman to put any of his own. I'm sure it'll be horrific, whatever playlist he manages to come up with for all of you. So definitely keep checking back there and see what exciting goodies we have for you.
And Kevo, where can everybody find you until we come back?
Until we come back for some of our more huge broadcasts where we will be discussing our favorite streamers and reality television programmers and more. You can find me on the socials at Kevo Really. That's KevoReally. And Teak, what about you?
You can find me haunting the streets of Maine at TK Elemental. And Nico, where can everybody find you?
You guys can find me, as always, all over this amazing network at X's for Show on all your social. As for me, you can find me at Nico Action, making all these faces at NicoAction. This has been the most amazing broadcast, but as always, we need you guys to do three things. Number one, we need you to be brave, right? Oh, no, we need you to stay safe. That's number one. I can't do my sign off anymore. Stay safe, be brave, evolve daily. Get the fuck out of here. It's been 3 hours and 15 minutes. I have to go to bed. I'm about to turn into a pumpkin.
We have to eat dinner. But until then, happy Friday the 13th. Happy Halloween. Stay spooky, and we'll see ya.
Stay safe.